All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Committee Adjustment, City of Kitchener. Today is March 20th, 2018. We're going to get things started right away. We're just going to forward a quick application. It's a little bit complicated, but we're going to call application number A 2018-029. That's 110, 130, and 136 Fergus Ave. If anybody is in support or opposition, would you please join us?
Mr. Chairman, I have a conflict on this one, so I'm going to, I act for the applicant in respect of this proposal, so I've given them a legal opinion in respect to this proposal, so I'm going to recuse myself and leave the room.
Thank you. All right, if we could start, we're going to start with the applicant. Please introduce yourself with your name and your position.
Mr. Chair, before we do, we had understood we were about 10th on the list of the agenda. We have a handout of a presentation we would like to be relying on, but the person who is bringing it to us is not in attendance yet. I think it would be very difficult for us to lead you through our submissions without that. And you've caught us a little bit off guard by moving us to the front of the agenda, and I apologize for this.
Deanna?
Through you, the Chair, it's been requested that the committee receive legal advice on the subject application, and we will have to go on camera. So you'll need to make a motion to go in closed session to seek solicitor-client privilege.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I move that we have an in-camera session.
All right, all in favor? All right, thank you for your patience, appreciate it. All right, let's go with the applicant right now. If you could just state your name. Did your partner in crime show up, or?
Unfortunately, no, we don't have copies of the presentation yet.
What we're going to do is we're going to put you back into the normal rotation on where we pulled your application from to provide that time for you guys, if that would be acceptable to you guys, and then
It is, thank you.
We'll open it up again at that time. Okay? Yeah. All right, we're going to start with application number SG 2018-004. That's 8 Bridge Street East. If anybody's in support or opposition, please join us. Good morning.
Good morning.
If you could please state your name, just for the record.
Colette Saunders?
Once again, sorry about that. All right. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff report?
I just briefly read over it this morning, yes.
Do you have any questions about, they're making a recommendation to approve subject to certain conditions. Do you have any questions or comments with regards to this?
No, I do not.
Is there any questions or comments from the committee members?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as you may know, I'm not a big favor of third-party signs because it can get out of hand. This one is fairly straightforward. The sign for, I can't remember the name of the sports field. It's right next door. It's difficult to see it. Other than that, Mr. Chair, I did notice that there were some comments from Hydro and the region, but nothing that really has to be included in this file. So on that, Mr. Chair, I move that this application be approved with the 5 conditions as in the staff report.
Having no questions or comments, I'll second the motion.
Perfect. All in favor? Noted. Please note that this is a recommendation to council. This will go before council for a final approval on April 16th at 7 o'clock. This is only for signs, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, application number SG 2018-005, 54 Queen Street North. In support or opposition? Good morning. You can please state your names for the record. There's a mic button down here at the bottom.
My name is Glenn Stewart.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff report to make a recommendation to approve subject to certain conditions?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any questions or comments with regards to the report?
No.
Pretty straightforward application for a sign. Does anybody from the committee have any questions or comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have a couple of comments. This is fairly similar to the previous application, and as such, I would like to add the 2 extra conditions that are written in the previous application. So that would be approving this as amended with the 2 extra conditions.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can those conditions please be read into the record?
Mr. Chair, it is that automatic changing copy portion of the sign be turned off between the hours 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., and that the conditions 1 and 2, no, I guess it would just be condition number 2, be fulfilled no later than August the 1st, 2018, and any extra time required must be done by the manager of development review. Am I in the wrong one? There's 5 conditions in the previous one. The one for the Joe Thompson Sports Field does not apply to this other application, so I'm suggesting that we. I know we're on.
Is this additional conditions? No?
Through the chair, I think I can provide clarification. On the first application, there were 4 conditions: that a sign permit be obtained, that automatic changing copy shall not exceed a minimum of 6 seconds, that the automatic changing copy be 11 p.m. to 6 p.m., and that the conditions 1 and 2 above are. So Mr. McCall is requesting to add that the time requirement and moving the date from the sign permit to conditions 1 and 2.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Thank you. That makes perfect sense now.
Okay. I just
Thank you
want to
very much. That's what I was trying to get through.
No problem. I just wanted to confirm, as the sign permit requirement is June 30 in the date, what date would you like for the conditions to be completed by?
I'm going to suggest August 31st. Gives the
I was
applicant
gonna
lots
say
of time.
October 30th.
I don't mind. I just need to confirm for the decision. So it's up to the committee.
That's October 30th.
I'll go with that.
Okay, so 4 conditions. October 30th is the deadline.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can you read the proposed language for the 4th condition, please?
Yep, absolutely. So condition 1, instead of saying that the sign permit be obtained from the planning division by June 30th, it would simply say that the sign permit be obtained from the planning division, period. Condition number 2 would say that the automatic changing copy shall not contain flashing, intermittent, or moving lights at the rate of change in the content of graphics shall be static for a minimum of 6 seconds. That the automatic changing copy portion of the sign shall be turned off between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., and that all of the above noted conditions, 1 and 2, are fulfilled no later than, I believe we're inserting October 30th at this time, and any review for an extension must be done by the manager of development. So those would be the 4 conditions as proposed.
Thank you. I have a concern with the 4th condition referring to the 2nd condition being fulfilled by a certain time period. I think that's an ongoing obligation. So I think that it should be referenced only to the 1st condition.
Okay. Are we good?
Mr. Chair, I move that this application be approved as amended with the wording that has been read out by our clerk.
I'll second the motion.
So you're adding some more recommendations, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, we're adding a couple different conditions to the approval, which basically limits the copy change time sign. So instead of being a flashing sign, it's limited once every 6 seconds, and then
Well, we have that, that's in here now, that's a number 2 in the sign recommendation right now.
And that the sign should be turned off between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. was the additional condition.
We can't have even a static thing at that time?
It's up to the
The
committee.
previous sign we had up there was the same message all the time.
Well, static's fine, as long as it stays static. We just don't want a changing sign that's flashing, that's distracting drivers. That's the general intent of what we're trying to do here. So it's not so distracting to the general public. It's not flashing for any residential people or anybody else to be kind of a distraction.
There's really no residential area in 54 Queen Street.
Julianne?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the subject property doesn't have any residential area in the immediate vicinity. It's at the corner of Queen and Weber Street.
Okay, I guess I was speaking in general terms. Generally, because we don't want flashing copy signs, you don't want them flashing near residential neighbors, flashing in people's windows, or being a distraction to drivers. That's generally why we put this condition in there. So I was kind of giving an overview of it, not in being so in particular to this particular site.
So can we have a static sign at night?
No, we're making recommendations that the sign will be turned off between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m.
No, we could not have a static message in that period of time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant, is there a reason why you would want that on in the middle of the night?
Well, why not? There's people go by, there's a number of people go by Weber Street that could read it. How do we get our message out? The idea of the sign is to put a message out to the public.
I'm not sure how many people would be walking by at 2 o'clock in the morning
Well, I didn't say walking, driving by.
or driving.
Weber's a Weber Street.
The issue of changing copy signs, through you, Mr. Chair, the issue of changing copy signs has been one of interest for this committee for 10 years now, and not that previous applications set a precedent, but I'm still of the opinion that it doesn't need to be on at 2 in the morning. So I'm just going to say that I don't think it'll impact the applicant in any way to have it turned off between 11 and 6 a.m. Saves electricity.
Well, there's a regional sign within probably 30 meters of it, the one that's 24.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I understood the point of the condition was to to have the sign remain static so that there isn't a change in copy over that period of time. If it's static, it's not a change copy, it's an illuminated sign, which I understand exists all over the downtown commercial area and are on all night. So I would have no problem if, perhaps for clarity, we amended the condition to say that the change copy sign remain static between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Mr. Chair, I'd go with that amendment.
Are you satisfied with that?
I'm just saying, the region has a sign with it.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that the genesis of this discussion stems from a previous application where this condition was proposed to be imposed by staff. Perhaps we could hear from staff as to why that condition was initially proposed.
Certainly.
Through you, Mr. Chair, could you repeat? I didn't hear everything Ms. Meter said. Sorry.
No problem. Through you, Mr. Chair, Ms. Van Westerholt, I was on the understanding that this condition for the change copy being turned off between the hours of 11 and 6 stems from a previous staff report on a previous application for the same site, and that my fellow committee member was suggesting that it be incorporated because it was suggested by staff on a previous application. If that is the case, I'm curious to know why it was recommended previously by staff.
I would have to look into the details of that because I don't have any information on that in terms of what the history of it was. Is it something that you need to make your recommendation or something that I can follow up with the committee members?
Excuse me. Through you, Mr. Chair, we have a condition that's before, that's been tabled by a member of the committee based on a previous application. We have some objections from the applicant, so I just wanted to get to the crux of the issue, and if perhaps I'll leave it to my fellow committee member to explain the basis if he knows.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and staff, feel free to chime in if they have some opinions on this. Starting about 5-6 years ago, we started putting conditions on changing copy signs that they be turned off between 11 and 6 a.m. That has been included in a number of applications, staff reports, conditions on signage, going back quite some time. And my position is that if it's a changing copy sign, it doesn't need to be on at 2 in the morning. So that's my, that's the basis on why I am bringing forward the 2 extra conditions.
So does that mean, excuse me, does that mean your motion is standing that you'd like the applicant and the conditions as you've noted, or are you okay with changing it to having a static sign between that time because of considering the location in the downtown core area, the limited residential impact, that the fact there is no residential neighbors around there. It's across from the regional courthouse. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's
I think this, even the center and the square sign changes all day too. Anyway, can we leave a sign on at night with a static message?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. I think for the sake of moving on with this application, if it's between 6 or between 11 and 6 in the morning, if the sign is static, that meets the intention of previous examples of changing copy signs, because it wouldn't be a changing copy sign. I don't know how that's going to be monitored, I guess on a complaint basis. But yeah, I'll modify my request that the wording be that the sign be static between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Okay, can I get a second?
I will second the motion as modified.
All right, all in favor? Approved as amended.
Thank you. I just think your rule should be applied equally.
Pardon me?
I think the rule should be applied equally with all signs. Thank you.
All right, application number A2018-022, 205 West Oak Trail. Anybody in support or opposition? Good morning.
Good morning.
If you could please state your name for the record.
Megan Garrity with GSP Group.
I'm Victoria Sleem. I'm a resident of 56 Glen Vista Drive.
Great, thank you. All right, have you both had an opportunity to read the staff report?
Yes.
Yes.
I make a recommendation to approve the staff report. I'm sure that you don't have any questions or comments on it currently.
I just wanted to add that we've gone through the site plan process and we currently have approval in principle for that application. We've also got engineering and landscape comments, and we're working on fulfilling those with staff. I'd be happy to answer any questions related to each of the 3 variants being requested.
Thank you. We're going to go to the opposition. I'd just like to hear what your concerns are on this application.
Yeah, so I went through the site plan, and based on where my backyard it faces onto the proposed site, it says that there is currently an existing fence, and there is not. There's no fence behind my backyard. And from your meeting notes, it clearly shows my yard is a big chunk of the site plan, and there's no existing fence. So as it stands, there's a lot of construction debris that blows up onto our backyard, as well as there's a huge drop-off, and also on your site plan it says that there's a retaining wall and a visual barrier, and there is not.
I would expect that they'd probably fall under site plan approval, and those things will be constructed, but let's hear from the applicant.
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. So if there is not an existing fence there, there definitely will be. So we will make that correction and relay it through staff, because there is definitely intended to be a fence along that whole property. So we can correct that. In terms of any other concerns, I'm not sure that they're related specifically to the amendments being requested, but I'm happy to chat with you afterwards if there's anything else we can do.
I just want to ensure that the fence would be built before the construction begins, to delay any more construction debris being blown up onto our backyard, as well as we have small kids, so that is a safety concern as well. There is an existing fence that stops at the townhouses. I don't know if they forgot to continue to build it to our house and our neighbors, but it is a concern of ours.
Excuse me, through me, please.
Sorry?
Everything should be directed through
sorry.
me, please. Thank you. Maybe we need to direct this to staff. I don't, this is going to be a site plan process, and I'm concerned that her timelines will not be met for a fence because of, generally the fence is one of the last cosmetic things that are be constructed, and through,
Typically, yes, the fence is probably one of the latter stages, but if we've heard the applicant say that they're willing to put that fence up or some sort of fencing, there is often construction-type fencing during the construction phase, and that should assist with some of the concerns that the applicant has raised with respect to debris and whatnot, and a lot of it really relies on the actual development and the developer's practices during construction.
Through you, Mr. Chair, not having the actual builder here with me right now, I'll definitely bring that concern forward to them, and hopefully we can get something in advance of the construction so that this can be handled appropriately.
I had a couple of questions. Some of the variances on this, they're quite extensive variances. We have there's a lot of variances in there. Like, you're asking for 60 and 70% variances. Why couldn't we just bring the site into compliance instead of asking, we're 66 and 73% variances? Like, these aren't minor variances. All of a sudden they become a little bit more extensive. We want a side yard from 4.5 meters, or hold on. One in the side yard from the street, 1.5 meters rather than 4.5, and another rear yard from 2 meters rather than 7.5. I understand that there's some complexity with the front yard and the rear yard setbacks and where the side yards are located, but we can't have 4 side yards in this property. It's like, where is the security for the neighbors to providing what the bylaw is supposed to stand for the side yard and rear yard setbacks? At this point in time, I review the sketch plan, and I have concerns about the amount of variances and where are we providing the setbacks that are appropriate for other residential neighbors.
So to you, Mr. Chair, just to give you a bit more context as to why we're asking for these variances, effectively right now the front yard is Postmaster Drive, so it's the shorter of the 2 frontages. We're effectively proposing that West Oak Trail be the front yard, and instead of going and changing the definition, we've asked that the setback requirement along that frontage be reduced from 4.5 meters to the 1.5 meters. So that would bring the building forward towards the street, and staff have, in their report and through discussions in site plan, have told us that this is what they would like to see, is a building that's closer to the street edge to provide for better pedestrian orientation and just a better edge overall through that area. If you were to consider that the front yard, then the easterly property limit that abuts the stormwater management pond, that no longer acts as the rear yard and effectively acts as the side yard. So for a side yard that abuts a stormwater management pond, 2 meters versus 7.5 meters is more appropriate. There aren't any other uses along that side that would require a larger setback. And then I would also note that along the northern part of the property, I believe where you maybe live, there is the required 7.5 meter setback along that edge, which would act as the rear yard. The third variance is the reduction from 7.5 to 6 meters, and in discussions with staff, we thought it would be appropriate to make that reduction, allowing for more landscaping and pedestrian access along the front of those sixplexes. And it would still allow enough room for private amenity space along the rear of those units. And 1.8 meter fence would be provided along that side yard as well. So given the orientation of the site, that's why the variances seem so large, is because we're essentially flipping the site around so that the front is along West Oak Trail and not along Postmaster Drive.
Maybe this is a question for staff. When we review it, the adjacent properties that are shown in the air photography, if we're amassing these buildings to come to the front, what are the townhouses that are further down West Oak Trail? Were they amassed and put forward to the building? If we're going to continue on the streetscape frontage and the idea that they're supposed to come along the front yard setbacks, if we're pushing all these buildings forward, were these townhouses that were built previously on West Oak Trail, were they pushed up forward? Or are we closing the streetscape in a bit?
I don't know the specifics of it. I would have to refer to the site plans for the other. Like, are you referring to the existing development that is already there?
If we're talking about the streetscape and how it's going to be laid out, and
yes,
the design and the view of the street, right? When we say that we want to push all the buildings forward, well, are we in keeping with what is existing?
Yes, we are.
That's my question. Is because if I look at these, it looks like they're set back probably to the front yard setback, and now if we're going to change the side yard setback to the front yard setback as it states here, it looks like we're pushing these buildings even more forward onto the street.
Actually, what we're doing is the intent of the front yard setbacks, as the committee members are aware, is that we have an established street line, and by allowing these variances, that street line will be maintained. So to answer your question, Mr. Chair, yes, it will be in keeping with the development that is already in place. And considering this is probably one of the last parcels within this larger area to be developed, it is definitely in keeping with what is there. It has gone through site plan approval. It is an irregular shaped lot. The applicant has worked with staff in order to achieve the development in terms of what we consider is good planning. The fact that there are multiple variances is not uncommon, especially with an irregular shaped parcel and a corner property. The applicant spoke earlier to the fact that directing the bulk of the development to West Oak Trail as opposed to Postmaster was desired by planning staff in order to achieve that built form along the street edge and in order to continue the development along that edge. So the site plan approval has already gone through and has made accommodations for a lot of good planning practices. We heard from the applicant that there's additional landscaping that's going to be provided. There will be a fence provided. All of those principles in order to help address some of the concerns even raised by the neighboring resident.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the committee members?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just wanting to make sure that in my own mind, the properties on West Oak Trail, fronting onto West Oak Trail, there will be a common concept. Yeah, so this proposed development will be compatible with what is already existing further down the road. That's my one comment, and I think I see our staff nodding. The second part being for the adjacent neighbor, my suggestion through you, Mr. Chair, would be maybe the two of you could get together and figure out a way to get a little bit of fencing across the back of her property before. And that can be up to the two of you to decide whether it's a temporary construction fence at the moment to be replaced by a proper board-on-board or whatever you decide in the future. For the adjacent neighbors, it's always good to make friends with your neighbors. So That's not an official comment that needs to be in the minutes. I just thought I would say that. So, Mr. Chair, I will move that this be approved as per the staff report.
Great. We're going to just hear from Ms. Meter first.
Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, first question I have is through the site plan process, was a construction plan provided? Is that and is that imposed through a site plan agreement or anything of that sort?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe we only have our first initial engineering submission, so that could be part of the submission package later on. I'm not sure exactly if it's been requested, though.
Oh, sorry, I think I misunderstood. So it's in site plan process. It hasn't been conditionally approved for site plan?
It has been approved in principle, yes.
Okay, so, and there is not a construction plan as part of that approval in principle? Okay. So I would actually recommend, I think I'll be recommending a condition be imposed that a fence be put up. We have a resident who's come out and expressed her concerns, and I think they should be addressed. And I don't know if we can, temporary, I think we should discuss what the materials might be, but there should be some sort of fencing that's put up at the outset before any site alteration occurs. And whether or not that's replaced later is up to you and I guess what you've agreed to in the site plan. So that's my first comment. Secondly, amenity space, it looks like in sort of central to the site there is an amenity area, is that correct?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, there is a bit of an amenity space in the middle of the site, which includes a tot lot. Because there is an easement that also runs parallel to that area, we're a little bit restricted in what can be done within that easement, so we've tried to keep the structures out of that, and the rest will be landscaped accordingly.
All right, and I see your point. This is, I agree that, Mr. Chair, a number of these variances are actually technical because of the technicality of what the front yard is. When I look to the north of the property, it appears that there's a 7.5 meter setback, which is technically a rear yard.
Yep.
And so that's meeting the minimum requirements. But to the west, you have a 6 meter setback. Through you, Mr. Chair, a 6 meter setback. Do we know what to me, when I look at this site plan, it looks like that's a similar relationship to the property, the existing buildings on the west side of the property?
Through you, Mr. Chair, sorry, do you mean the townhouses that back onto the sixplexes?
Yes, and front onto Postmaster Drive.
They have a reduced rear yard, but it's not all the way to 6 meters.
And do they have, through you, Mr. Chair, do they have external patios?
I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Just a general comment then, based on that, and to the east, the setback, it effectively acts as a side yard setback, and the future development will have to be compatible with that. I have no concerns with the variances as proposed. I hear from staff, and from my review, it appears that streetscape will be maintained. So I will support this application subject to a condition for some sort of temporary fencing being put in. I don't know what the appropriate material would be. Perhaps through you, Mr. Chair, we could look to staff for that. Some assistance in that regard?
Perhaps if through you, Mr. Chair, staff could offer that. Yes, that it be a temporary fencing, that it be approved through staff as we would normally through the site plan process. And we would direct that, we would appreciate that direction from you, that we can just approve it as we would normally through a site plan process. Some sort of a temporary fencing that will provide some protection from the debris moving over onto the residence area.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, but I think we'll have to write something into the conditions here just to ensure that it has to happen prior to any building happens. That way you're going to be protected there. I'd also like to make a couple notes. If in the future, for complicated site plans like this, if we get larger copies, you know, these are rather difficult to read. Secondary, I'd also like to note that a lot of our applications, they're subject to the recommendation. They say approved on them, where there should be a recommendation to approve, right? The subject, like all these applications are saying they're approved. Anybody who's reading this, including us, is now subject to believing that this is an approved application because of the wording. So I would like to ask staff to correct that to read, so that it reads approve, the recommendation to approve, and not approved. So we have ourselves a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and with the input from our colleague, I would suggest that, yes, staff work with the applicant to make sure that there is a fence of some kind installed before any major construction starts on the site prior to construction. And, Mr. Chair, I understand and support your position that on the wording of these things can be a little misleading to the general public. So, yeah, note to staff that from now on it should be subject to approval or recommendations, not in the past tense as it is here. So, my motion amended regarding the fence.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to further amend or get a clear understanding of the condition that we're imposing. I think it'd be a condition that temporary fencing, impermeable temporary fencing, so the whole point is to protect it from dust flying, so it couldn't be a chain link or anything like that, so impermeable temporary fencing be installed prior to site alteration.
Temporary or permanent. That way he has the option, if there's going to be an expense he can incur, he's going to have to put fencing up no matter what. He may want the opportunity to put install the fencing prior to that, instead of incurring twice the costs. Do you have a motion that's legible for us? Or, sorry, yeah, if you could read us back, what will be the condition?
That a permanent or temporary impermeable fence be installed through the site plan approval process to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning prior to construction.
I think that should read prior to building permit. We need to know that this is installed prior to the development, because he sticks a shovel in the ground, there's going to be dirt, there's going to be all sorts of like construction debris flying around. Yes, that would work.
I had a question to you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering the location of that. Would it only be along the one property boundary, or just one clarification on that?
I think, yeah, great question, thank you. I think we should further clarify that it should be along any abutting residential lands. You know, there's no need to do the entire stormwater management plan that's adjacent to it.
Through Mr. Chair, perhaps it should be, I could suggest, through any existing abutting residential.
Does that alleviate your concerns?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all in favor, as amended? Great, thank you. All right, application number 2018-023, 51 Simeon Street. Anybody in support or opposition?
Mr. Chair, at this point in time, I have to declare a conflict of interest. My daughter works for Whiting Design and has worked on this file, so I'll see you later.
Thank you. Good morning. If you could please state your names for the record.
Good morning. I'm Graham Whiting from Whiting Design, representing the applicant.
And Elizabeth Lang from Whiting Design.
Thank you. I trust you've both had the opportunity to read the staff report. They're making recommendation to approve subject to certain conditions. Do you have any questions or comments about this?
Not at this time.
The only issue is for a building permit for a garage. I just have one question. It is for a single-story garage, right? We're going to demolish the existing garage and continue to keep it a single-story, correct?
That's correct.
Ms. Meader, do you have any questions?
This might be very quick, Mr. Chairman. I have no questions or concerns.
Would you like to make a motion?
Certainly, sir. I move this application be approved, subject to the one condition set out in the staff report.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Application number 2018-024, this is 2 Crossbridge Avenue. If anybody's in support or opposition. 2 Crossbridge Ave. All right, application 2018-025, 500 River Trail Avenue. If anybody's in support or opposition. All right, application number CSD 18-058, oh, sorry, that's a report number. Application number 2018-026, 70 Castle Bay Street. If anybody's in support or opposition.
Good morning. Nick Bogart representing the applicant. We have reviewed the staff comments for both 70 Castle Bay and 156 Rockcliffe. They're 2 very similar applications. I did discuss the conditions with staff just to determine if they're necessary to have in, but we understand that the 2 conditions proposed are deemed appropriate by staff. So as such, we have no concerns with the staff recommendation.
Thank you. We're going to hear one application at a time just to ensure that our minutes are kept in order.
Sure, no problem.
Does the committee members have any questions with regards to this?
I do, Mr. Chair. It's really a question of a clarification or explanation. I see reference on the drawings for 70 Castle Bay to a hydrant being located very close to the proposed driveway. I'm just wondering if we can get an explanation of how the relationship between the two and if the hydrant is staying and how that's going to impact this application.
Sure. The hydrant was constructed during the servicing of this phase of the subdivision. It is proposed to be located 1.5 meters from the edge of the driveway, and that's partly the reason for one of the conditions, just to ensure that the driveway does remain the 1.5 meters away from the hydrant. It is proposed to remain where it is.
Any other questions? I have one question. I noticed that there was subject to source water protection and compliance. I'm just curious to know, why was this added to this application, considering it's part of a plan of subdivision, and would it not have been covered at that point in time? And is it kind of redundant to put this in such a simple application for a variance?
I'm not sure I understand the reference for the source water protection.
Well, neither do I. I don't understand why it's here.
Oh, you're speaking about the notice from the region that was printed off? That was included with the application submission. It was just as one of the application's requirements to have it in. Source water certainly was looked at during the overall approval of the subdivision, but just for completeness, it's also included here.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand that. I just, my bigger question, it's not with regards to your application, but this is a minor variance, It's just for an understanding why source water would even be a concern on something such a minor variance. This should have been dealt with at a higher level prior to it even being here, in an effort to help maintain and keep the Committee of Adjustment a little bit cleaner and smoother running. Pardon me, smoother running. I don't see how the relevant for this portion of the application or the compliance is required or necessary.
It is a regional requirement, and I believe the requirement for this would have came after the approval of the plan of subdivision. That's probably why the region is flagging it. I'm not sure that it required any additional work as a result, but perhaps the applicants could speak more to that, because I haven't been in consultation with the region over this matter. I don't see it as a...
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair. You're correct that it is a application of the region to include source water protection. It's just flagged as one of their application requirements. So we produced the short report through the region's website, and that flagged that there were no concerns with source water. So it was just kind of a process just to make sure everything is covered and there are no concerns.
Thank you. Maybe we could follow up with the region to find out on something like this. Do we really need it? Maybe somebody could follow up in the region to find out what is the grand purpose of this. I understand what the purpose is, if it was on subdivision or anything like that, or a larger purpose, but for something on a minor variance on a lot that's been approved, I just see that it's quite redundant to have this process through here. And that's all I have to say about that. Is there any other questions or comments from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve application 70 Castle Base, A 2018-26 without condition.
Was that without conditions?
Without conditions.
There's actually two of them there.
Then with conditions. I'm sorry, I missed them.
If it includes the two conditions, I'll second that.
Can you direct me to oh, sorry, I see them now.
All right. All in favor?
All in favor.
Great. Thank you. All right. We're also going to do 156 Rockcliffe as well right away. Does anybody have any questions with regards to this application? It's very similar to the previous application.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add with 156 Rockcliffe application, we did retain a transportation engineer to have a look at the alignment and just look at the sight lines for the driveway location, and just to ensure that there were adequate sight lines from the stop sign at the corner, viewing a car that would back in and out of the driveway. And the sight lines actually were greater than if it were a 90-degree intersection, just because of the curve in the road. So there are no concerns that way.
Is there any questions from the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you to staff, seeing this is very similar to the previous one that we just did, is there a reason why there were conditions in the first one, two conditions, and there are none in this?
I would appreciate just a moment to look at the two, because I've been out of the office for a couple of weeks, so I just want to refresh my memory. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can assist, I believe the one condition doesn't apply in this case. It relates to a fire hydrant that was located adjacent to the driveway in respect of the previous application, and I don't understand there to be such a hydrant in proximity to the driveway in this situation. However, I can't answer your question in respect of the requirement for a building permit.
Maybe what has happened is a building permit has been applied for this one already, so they have a permit in place, and on this one. I don't know if the applicant can speak to that.
I'm not sure if a permit has been applied for already for this property or not.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I guess I didn't read carefully on the on the first condition, because that doesn't apply to Rockcliffe, but I would like to add the one condition that the owner gets a building permit.
I think that would be acceptable, and if they've already applied for a building permit, then I assume the condition could be cleared.
Is that a motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, as amended. All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, application number 2018-028, 66 West Ave. Anybody in support or opposition?
Good morning. My name is
Morning.
Roman Zicki. I'm acting on the behalf of the owner.
My name is Carl F. Vasutsky, and I live at 62 West Ave.
My name is York Liu. I live in 68 West Avenue.
Thank you. Has everybody had an opportunity to read the staff report? Has everybody had an opportunity to read the staff report?
Yes.
Okay. All right, they're making recommendation to approve subject to some conditions. We're going to hear from the opposition first to express some of your concerns, and please tell us. So we'll start to my right.
I have a few concerns with that property. I understand they want to break two bylaws right off the bat by building that house with the size of the property.
I'm not clear on what you mean, sir.
They want to make it bigger than what they're allowed? The zoning?
Minor variance for just to enlarge the building envelope.
Excuse me, through me, please.
Oh, sorry.
And we'll address, and then, then we'll get to you in a minute, please. So what they're asking for, if you're down in the staff report, it states what their position is and what they're asking for. They're asking for minor variances to build a bigger house than is allowed in the zoning bylaw. So what they're asking for is a front yard setback. So he wants to put the house closer to the street than what is currently allowed at 1.92 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is required. And he also wants to put a rear yard setback of 3.56 meters, whereas a 7.5 meter rear yard setback is allowed. Also, he wants to permit the dwelling to encroach 2.65 meters within the 4.57 meter driveway visibility triangle. So he's asking for 3 variances to build on the property. Do you understand?
Yes, I do, but my understanding was it was going to be built to the same way that it was previously. Same size, I should say.
Well, that's why he's here, is he's asking for variances to build larger than what the zoning bylaw allows. Now, there are certain things that impact what these variances are for. Sometimes it's about because of road widening has been taken, and we're trying to keep the street image so that it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. We're working with the design. I'm sure the staff have worked with the design criteria in the street. I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Van Wetterhold for a moment, and she can advise a little bit.
I think I can maybe clarify to the people sitting on the side in opposition, the residents from the community. The reason why the applicant needs the variances or the changes to the setbacks is we're hoping that the construction of the new home will be in line with the existing development on either side. So both of your properties, your yards are closer to the street than what the zoning currently requires as well. But your houses already exist. So what these variances would do is ensure that the new development will also be in line with your houses along the street, so that we don't have a situation where the new house will be set back much further than your existing homes. And that's the reason for the variances. That's why they're required. And this was something that was discussed through the RIEN study that the city conducted about a year and a half ago. This was one of the situations, one of the scenarios that staff were trying to deal with through the outcome of that study. Now, that said, many of the regulations and recommendations that were made in that study were not yet implemented in the comprehensive zoning bylaw review because we haven't completed that review. However, that's why, as a case-by-case situation, this being one of them, where there's an infill situation where you have development on either side that has, an established street line and street edge, the way this street clearly does. We want to ensure that the new development is consistent with that street edge. So that's the reason why they have to bring those setbacks forward. Yeah.
I have a question. When I look at the plan, the sketch plan of the building permit, if we're trying to keep it in line, the plan shows that they're 6 feet, give or take, in front of both adjacent properties. When I look at the sketch plan, if we're trying to keep it in keeping and we're going to allow them this reduced frontage, well, the neighbor's yard and the houses, this house is going to stick out forward. I'm guessing I don't have a scale to it, but when you look at the sketch plan, it looks like it's about 6 feet in front of it.
And I believe that was through you, Mr. Chair, is to accommodate on-site parking and the driveway. In addition, and I don't disagree with you, there is a slight jog forward, but if we were to push a building further back, then they probably would have no amenity area in the rear yard, given the irregular shaped.
Are we overbuilding
of the rear yard?
Are we overbuilding the property then?
Can I make a comment? Sure. Possible. Actually,
yes, all right.
This site plan doesn't show the 2 porches that were constructed on both houses. So there's no location here of the porches, but there's actually 2 full-size porches on those 2 houses.
So you're saying that the sketch plan does not show, it shows only the brick buildings, it does not show the front porches?
Right. My surveyor probably just pulled the surveys, which those porches were built after the fact.
Yeah.
The one porch is 2.1 meters from the sidewalk, and the other porch is 1.7. So that's why 1.9, I'm just jogging the difference.
Thank you for that clarification. We have, I'm just going to hear from the other resident here. If you're...
First, I want to answer the gentleman.
You got to turn the mic on.
Oh.
No, there's a button.
Okay. First answer, he said the building, I talk about building is a foundation. Before the 66, they have a fire. They want to renovate it, but they have fire, so they burn down. So they put the sign on, they're going to build in the new house. So I phoned in to the planning department, and one gentleman told me, I said, how big is the house going to build? He said, they're going to build in same foundation they are, 1.5 store. I said, how many square feet? He said, nothing on hand. So I said, may I have the blue pen? He said, okay. He lives in the city. So 5 days later, I come pick up the planning. And they don't really plan, but they have a map in there. Then I look, the new foundation will be double the size, double the old foundation. And in the front, the foundation will be ahead before the old foundation. When they talk about it, say, like they can build in close to the city. Yeah, in our street, old house, we all have a porch, but not a foundation, just a porch. Now he want the building actually is 2 story. He said 1.5 story, but when you look at picture, yeah, the roof look 1.5, but the building is 2 story. Maybe it's high ceiling too, but they wouldn't say. And when I look at the planning, I'm not the engineer, I just basically look. So nowadays the square feet will be about 2,200 square feet. And for our house,
900
no,
tops.
maybe 1,000.
No, 900.
You know, So a lot of things, I think they never mention about the rebuild. We think if you have a foundation, let's say 20 by 20, and you're building a foundation by 20 by 40, they're not only rebuild, that means you complete building a new house. And one house, I look at the picture here, from my side they was have a driveway because all the houses small lot. In the wintertime, the snow, you don't have too much place to put the snow. So basically people push snow to the back because they are open. So now they're building the garage, top with building, and all the snow where he put. And all the water come down. Our basement, I live in there 25 years. Before never had problem, but I think 10 years ago, because Queen Street, too big building, and the basement, when the springtime, summertime, the water level go high. So the basement sometimes get a little flood. So now he building a big building there, all the water, snow, where they go. Then you're going to have problem with basement. And another thing, they have a sewing line on the property line there. So if they have problem, how they going to fix? And the city send the city worker come to, they say they special for underground. So I talk with them. I say, oh, you have a special machine can, like a trencher. He said, oh no, you need people go down, so you need at least one people. I said, oh, then maybe it's wrong. He said, oh, by then they wouldn't be here because they may retire, you know? So a lot of things, these things, they only, in this paper, they only talk about the front or back. But they never talk about when they rebuild a small thing, they double the size, and I don't know how high. And I speak to the planning gentleman, he told me, oh, they allow building 3-story high, but they are not, they only 1.5 story. So a lot of things, this thing, and here, my son get the guideline for this manly violence prepared by the Frank Oak. I don't know, it's from law firm. And in the back, I have quite an issue with all these things because you don't want to go to Ontario municipal. You know, they broke, when they build in there, my living room, my back room, you look out, you don't see nothing, only the wall. Now I look out before the old house because all foundation is same. So if I look out, I can see his garage, I can see half the view. But when the new building come out, they double the size. Basically my window, I look out, no view, only see a little sky.
All right, thank you.
Can I address those issues possibly?
We're just going to finish with the opposition and then we'll walk through, okay? All right.
Also, with the blueprints with that new house, the one wall goes all the way down the edge of my driveway to the sidewalk. How am I supposed to see anybody coming down the sidewalk with that house obstructing my view? And I notice all the windows are onto my side. I don't want nobody looking into my house from this new house, like my neighbor just said.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me. May I have one more question?
One more.
When they rebuild the house, is it supposed they should build in the same size, or they can build in whatever they want?
I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Van Westerhout.
Because they're not building a new house. The house is burned down, they rebuild.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just so that I understood the question, was the question whether there are restrictions on the size of house that you can build?
Yes, I think his question is concerns with how the house is built or the size and what his rights are to build, which, you know, if I'm correct, he's allowed to build with what's within the building envelope, so that would be the setbacks as set out in the zoning bylaw. So whatever the zoning bylaw allows him, that would be the building envelope that he would be allowed to build in.
Yeah, and like they're building double the foundation. Basically, they double size of the house. But if they have a 1,000 square feet house, when they rebuild, they should build in same, maybe different view, but it will be same size. Do they? But I don't know, because I'm not planning, I don't know the bylaws thing. But I just presume something broke, if you're building it the same size. Not to say you're building double size the house.
Yeah, I think what he's asking for is he's asking for these variances to build a larger house than what he is allowed through the zoning bylaw. Now, there's conditions on why he's here asking for that, as far as road widening's been taken, front yard setbacks. Just like your house is not in compliance with the zoning bylaw, he's asking for variances to build not in compliance with the zoning bylaw. This is what he's asking for.
Yeah, but our building, the building 50 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
So they went down, whatever the zone change, you can say, oh, you turn it down, what do you do? Like our house, the hydro inside is not, right?
Yeah, okay, I think if my committee members, does everybody have a clear understanding of what your concerns are? Because if so, I'm going to turn it over to the applicant, and we're going to hear from him, and let him do a presentation and discuss what his application is about. Now, we've heard your concerns, right? And we'll come back to you in a few minutes, okay?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so just hold on.
Yes, I believe it's about 45%.
Can you put the mic a little bit closer?
Oh, sorry. I believe it's around 45% for allowed lot coverage for building, so I'm within that. As far as addressing the water issues, actually the impact will be lessened from previous because I have to connect to the storm sewer. So all the roof runoff will be dissipated away from the lot, and I'm still allowing the 1.2 meter side yard. And with the overhang, the impact is going to be minimal as far as that's concerned. And as far as the actual structure of the building, those were just very preliminary. I've been dealing with the planning department and whatnot to make sure that we build something that will basically fit within what's in the neighborhood. So those are just very preliminary. It's just
Well, that would be encouraging. I know that there's been a big desire and push by the city to ensure the scopes and designs that are happening in our neighborhoods are in keeping with our general neighborhoods.
I built a few other houses in existing neighborhoods, and I've had nothing but positive comments. Victoria Street, Simeon Street.
Well, currently we have two residents who are concerned about the size and the massing on the site, and that's what they're here for, to express.
The only other thing that has come up is I'm not allowed to put a foundation because I have to keep it above the flood line, which again, by increasing the size of the building, it gives me a reasonable floor area, habitable floor area. So that's one other thing that maybe should be taken under consideration, because
that would be a thing that you would consider when you're purchasing the property. For us here, that has no bearing.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I would like to hear from my committee members if they have any questions or comments.
Mr. Chair, through you, a couple of concerns. First one being the DVT issue and transportation planning's comments. I see in the general report that it will be discussed in the final development. So maybe through you, Mr. Chair, to traffic planning, do they have any further comments on the daylight visibility triangle or driveway visibility triangle?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Our concerns are that it's a brand new build, and the porch and a portion of the building will be within the driveway visibility triangle, and also it also impacts the neighboring property as well, their visibility triangle. Those are our main concerns with this application.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chair. Is that enough to withdraw your support for this application?
Can I make a comment?
I think we're waiting for Mr. Seller.
Sorry, I thought you were asking a question. Could you repeat your question?
The comments that you made with regarding the DVT and the bright clear language, is that a fatal flaw in this application?
From our perspective, because it's a brand new build, it is.
Just to clarify for everybody else, the ask is for a minor variance to encroach approximately halfway through the driveway visibility triangle. And that does, it is an obstacle for sure. Ms. Meter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, a further follow-up question then. Where was the existing building or the previous, it's been demolished? The
right.
previous building, I'm curious as to what the setback on that was, and I'm also curious as to what the setback would be to meet to completely clear the visibility triangle. If someone can speak to that, that would be helpful.
I'm actually familiar with the property. I think that the house was very much in keeping with the residences beside it.
Right.
Mr. Stevens?
Through the chair, the proposed dwelling is largely in the same location as the previous building. The previous building was located 12.5 feet, but also had a porch on the front of it. This building that's being proposed is inclusive of that porch, so the setback is generally in line. In this case, there are a few competing objectives, and ultimately my recommendation was to have a reduced DVT in order to have a street line that was consistent. My proposal would be that as part of the condition of that's proposed in my recommendation for the elevation review, that detail review of the porch would be done to ensure that there would be visibility so that the DVT objective would be met, even though if it physically cannot be met on site because of the porch.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
When we look at the sketch plans, the porch is quite unique looking. Is there any other comments from?
I'm not sure I understand what the setback, the front yard setback would be if the DVT was completely kept unencumbered. I understand that was very helpful from staff's comments on the existing being very similar to the proposed front yard setback, but I would like to know if we can find out what that setback would be if the DVT were to be unencumbered.
Through the chair, it would be impossible to know for sure. It would depend on the design of the building. But because of the width of the building and the desire to have a consistent front wall setback, in order to maintain a similar design, the setback would have to be 4.57 meters from the street line in order to achieve the driveway visibility triangle without a reduction.
Mr. Stevens, can you advise if the adjacent properties would have viable, or to you, Mr. Seller, advise if the neighboring properties would have viable or legal DVTs?
Through the chair, as part of my review of this application, I did pull all of the surveys for the properties along this portion of West Ave because the built form does vary, and it does vary on the other side of the street. My recommendation in the DVT that I'm recommending is a fairly consistent approach across the rest of the street. I can't say with absolute certainty that any do conform or do not conform, but from my review of the surveys, the existing dwellings do not have the legal DVT, specifically on either side of this property.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have some further comments on the application. I'm not sure if I can support the front yard setback given staff's concern, but I think given the existing situation, it's something that's been dealt with for the years past, so presumably nothing will change in that regard. In terms of windows being on that side of the house, there is no variance required in respect of the side yard setback, and windows are permitted in the building code so long as the setbacks are met, and that is what I understand the application is proposing to meet. Really, we're talking about the front yard and the rear yard setback. In terms of the front yard setback, if it is replicating an existing condition, I'm generally supportive of that. And the rear yard condition appears to be, again, this is an irregular shaped lot, and it's measured from the distance closest to the building. And it appears to be similar to the rear yard amenity area on the adjacent property at 68 West Ave. So I would suggest that the amenity space provided is appropriate. My last comment is in respect of the condition proposed by staff, condition 1, that the owner submit a site drawing and building elevation drawings for the proposed dwelling to confirm the appropriateness of the proposed development to the satisfaction of the city's director of planning. My concern is that we don't have the authority to require site plan. This is a single detached dwelling, and it's exempt from site plan approval. It talks about confirming the appropriateness of the proposed development, and in my opinion, Mr. Chair, the forum for determining the appropriateness of the development is now through this committee that was appointed by council. So we need the drawings, the site drawings and building elevations put before council, or before this committee for consideration in terms of the appropriateness of the application. And that has been done. We have plans, we have elevations, we have the information we need to make that determination. I won't support that condition. And further in the staff report, it refers to policy 4C18E, requiring that where a minor variance is requested to facilitate residential intensification, the impact of the variance must be reviewed to ensure that the lands can function appropriately and not create unacceptable adverse impacts for adjacent properties by providing both number of parking spaces and an appropriate landscape amenity area on the site. And that's been done. Again, in my opinion, we have the site plan and the elevations required to make that determination. And those drawings are required to be provided as part of the application. I believe the staff report goes on to say, as per policy 4C17 of the official plan, the owner should submit to the director of planning building and elevation drawings and a building site drawing showing the design and location of the proposed new building. Again, I believe that is something that should be part of the application. It's required to be part of the application, and that requirement has been satisfied. And again, I will not be supporting that condition.
Chairman?
Mr. McCall, do you have anything to add?
Actually, Mr. Chair, through you, just for clarification, with our colleague, you're saying that you just cross out condition number 1?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will not be supporting condition 1. I would, at this point, subject to further comments and questions, I believe that I will be supporting the rest of the proposed variances and the rest of the proposed conditions.
One more question, Mr. Chair, and I don't want to drag this on too long. The issues that have been brought up by the GRCA and seem to have been covered off under condition number 3, maybe just through you to staff, shouldn't GRCA approval be acquired before it comes for minor variance?
Through the chair, upon receipt of receiving the GRCA comments that were attached to the report, I did have a conversation with the author of those comments, and I had asked if there was any objections to proceeding with establishing the building envelope in terms of the front and rear yard setback. The GRCA had no objections to that. However, they still will require a fill permit once the final elevations and detailed grading are completed.
Thank you. That answers that question. So, Mr. Chair, upon hearing Ms. Meter's concerns with condition number 1, I move that this application be approved with 2 conditions, which is in the report named numbered 2 and 3, and we just eliminate that first condition.
I'd like to hear from staff with regards to further on condition number 1.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Condition number 1 was inserted as we have typically in infill type situations. We typically require a site drawing and building elevations in order to ensure compatibility with the adjacent area. So, seeing as we've heard from 2 residents of the area, I think it would be prudent to retain that condition, simply so staff can ensure that the development that actually does go in place is suitable for the neighborhood and scale and size of the development. I believe Ms. Meter has on occasion also stepped aside and has not supported that condition in the past. This is something that staff feels strongly about, and that we feel that we have the authority to ask for conditions. It's an appropriate condition under the Planning Act, and in addition, how would it be any different than requiring grading plans or other plans that require further approvals after this committee? The condition is actually written in that form so that staff can be assured, as well as the committee in making its decision can be assured that the development that proceeds is compatible.
Thank you. The sketches kind of bother. Well, I'm concerned about the driveway visibility. It does concern me. It is quite a reduction. I understand your concerns in the developability of the site. I really do. I also am hearing from the opposition as well, and the massing of this site. Because these are very unique houses that are in this neighborhood, to build something that's 2-story and brought up right up to the curb that doesn't have a porch on it, these old houses, they had big wooden porches that spanned the entire width of the house and things like this, where now we're stepping back to put a garage in, and we've got a more like a veranda, is what I would call it, than a front porch, followed by a mast. It's going to stick out on the streetscape. I would really like to have some sort of comfort level coming from city staff that they're going to help assist in the creation, the design, and maintain the integrity of the streetscape. My concern is when I look at these drawings that are in front of me, this is going to really stand out on the streetscape of quite old homes. I just have concerns about that process, and I'd like at least to know that staff have some sort of comfort level in allowing this. These 2 residents have concerns about their driveway visibility, what it's going to look like to live next to this new development or this new proposed residence. We need to at least hear from them and understand their concerns to help do something for them, instead of massing a larger building with quite a large building footprint compared to what their residences are. It's a unique situation. I understand that the lots are a little bit undersized, but these are developed all the time.
Through you, Mr. Chair, all the more reason to have a site drawing and some elevations so that staff can ensure. It's a tool that we use. We are not requiring a full site plan approval the way we would under Section 41. This is not intended to replace Section 41, but because residential uses of this nature are not subject to Section 41 site plan approval on a case-by-case basis as deemed appropriate, staff would like the committee's support in requiring appropriate elevations and site drawings. We aren't even calling them site plans because we don't want to confuse matters in terms of Section 41 approval. This is not what staff is requesting. What staff is requesting is simply the ability to ensure exactly what I think the committee's trying to ensure as well. And given in light of the concerns that were raised by the residents, we would concur that staff is attempting to ensure that whatever development occurs on that site is appropriate.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes.
I wonder, this building is developed for a new build or is rebuilt because of fire? Suppose they fire, they rebuild.
Well, yeah, ultimately that's what's happening here is they're going to rebuild the house. But they're not going to rebuild the house as it was built before. There's no way that they're going to try to reconstruct those standards or anything like that.
So why they don't put all the foundation there so they can compare? They only put the 2 sides, but this one they don't have all the sides, all the foundation.
I have a question for the applicant. Is there going to be zero foundation on this property, or is it going to be where the existing foundation was because that was the allowable limit? And where does the flood limit impact it, or the regulated limit?
I have to be at 357.7 above the flood line, so it might be a crawl space, or it might just not be. It'll still be a foundation, but it might be fully backfilled. Does that answer your question, or?
I'm just trying to determine the size of the basement or potential basement, because once we make an approval on this, like if we had an understanding of where that, you said it's 357 or 327?
357, I believe. No, sorry, 327.7. So actually the foundation that's going to go in is probably going to be lower than what's showing top of foundation right now.
So 327 ends
so
up
it'll
on the
actually
street.
make the building shorter yet.
So there will be no foundation as far as livable, habitable space.
That's right.
It will be at best a crawl space.
That's right.
Through you, Mr. Chair, for that condition number 1, and not that I'm putting words in somebody else's mouth here, it is asking for site drawings and building elevations which have been supplied with this application, unless, of course, these are just preliminary elevations and site drawings.
I think if you note on the survey portion, it is referred to as a sketch. This has no weight, being the sketch plan. It hasn't been through site plan approval, it hasn't been submitted to anybody. This is just a concept plan or a sketch plan. That does not mean that they have to adhere to what they're being proposed here. This is a rendering of what they could put. What we're approving here, this doesn't have to be what's built. This is, this can be just an idea, right? At this point in time, this is not, they submitted drawings, but we don't know who did these drawings, right? Is this by an architect? Is it by a certified builder designer? Is this the actual plans that they're going to build?
No.
You're shaking your head that this is not what's going to be built.
It's just a starting point, so we can basically, take a look at it. The comments are coming in. Obviously, we're going to make some adjustments.
So at this point, what we have here, by you informing us of that, is that these are not the designs. This is just a starting point, as you put it. If we can find something to meet at least a middle ground with the residents who have various and genuine concerns here, I think that that's a fair establishment for the proposed developer as well as the neighbors to get together to make sure through city staff's help. And I think the tool here is to keep it within the condition number 1, albeit beside the rights and development, it is a good condition for development to help satisfy the neighbors and ensure that it's in keeping with the massing and scaling of the neighborhood, albeit out of character.
Mr. Chair, may I respond to the comments on this point, since we're going down this path? It's typical in a lot of committees of adjustment to bring forth final designs, and really, if you're coming to a public hearing and you are asking for relief from the zoning, you should be presenting what you consider to be your final product, because you have people from the public coming out and wanting to understand what's being built. If you're attaching a condition that gives staff the authority to confirm the appropriateness, and whatever that means, and I find there's a lot of ambiguity with that term, then you're creating effectively a separate process that's outside of this public process. It's typical in other committees, very typical in other committees, to come forth with final drawings that are very often become part of the application by way of a condition that has the application be affected substantially in accordance with the said drawings. So this is not a typical way of dealing with it, and I reiterate that. I would also note that if there's concern about the front yard setback and how that's going to be implemented, giving the staff the authority to determine the appropriateness is not the way to deal with it. It's either appropriate or it's not, because you're effectively, by approving that setback, you are giving them that as of right permission. You're creating a new permission for them, and a condition like this will not address that. Once it's approved, it's approved. If it's not appropriate, we should not be approving it. The committee member who doesn't find it to be appropriate should be voting against it. So that's my position. And I maintain my comments that this condition is beyond our authority and beyond the discretion that staff should be given in a public process such as this.
But maybe what we're doing, and maybe what we need to consider, is maybe this should be deferred. At the point of deferring it, you could come back with a more appropriate design, scaling of the site to really revisit this. Because if I sense that Ms. Meter is not satisfied with the amount of information that's being provided to make a decision on this process. We have neighbors who are concerned, and we just have a conceptual plan. And if there was actual better drawings or information prepared for us, we'd be in a better position, one, for the residents or your neighbors to be able to see what's going to be built, so they might be more satisfied with it, as well as this committee.
But why can't we put in a condition that something because I just did a house 2 years ago, it was the exact same case scenario. We got the severance and whatnot, and then it was up to me to deal with the planning department to design a house that was accepted by the city. Hence, I thought the process was going to be the same, and at the end of the day, I created a house that was, or designed a house that was more than appropriate for the...
I hear you and understand, but the problem is, as Ms. Meter said, she says you're kind of taking it out of what this process is, as the Committee of Adjustment. We're here to hear from the public. Right. You're two neighbors, and I'm sure you're going to sell the house, right? So they're not going to be your neighbors, but you're going to build a house. You're going to build a house that's going to impact both of those people for as long as they live there, right? So put it into staff's hand. Staff don't live there. You're not going to live there. Who's representing them? At this point in time, this committee is here to listen to and try to find some sort of mediation or understanding on what the residents are supposed to feel like, because if we put it just in staff's hand, you may come to some conclusion on yourselves, but it's excluding any of the residents.
I understand that.
If we can work with the whole idea is to work with the residents that are here. And I'm wondering if more information being provided to this committee would be make our decision easier.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, as we, staff and committee well knows, we have approved many applications in the past and included the wording as per elevation or as per the survey. And the appropriateness of the development, especially with an infill. And I agree that, these, now that I look at it again, these elevations that are supplied with the application are not a final, and it could change. So I think maybe you're right, Mr. Chair. Maybe we should defer this until the applicant has some better information to bring to us. I agree with our colleague that this is the place where these kind of decisions should be made, as opposed to delegating it to the city's director of planning. So, Mr. Chair, do you think we should defer this?
That would be a motion for you to make. I was just throwing it out there as an idea to help try to find some sort of middle grounds there that we can find where we're going to satisfy not only the proposed development, but also the neighbors as well as city staff. And right now we have a committee that's very divided, I think, on what this proposal and what these conditions should be. Upon my quick review of it, the idea of deferring it to have more information would probably be the most beneficial.
It may have not been common practice in the past, but an option for the committee, if it helps to disseminate the stalemate, you may opt to vote on a condition separately. So if it is the will of the committee that the staff recommendation would be put on the floor as a whole, you could separate and vote on the conditions separately to allow whatever conditions to be voted on to stand at the end of the recommendation. Just an option for procedural advice.
Thank you. Through
you, Mr. Chair, I think I will make a motion to defer not only because we don't have final drawings, but also because I get a sense that certain committee members would find final drawings helpful in understanding certain of the variances. So I will move to defer the application pending final drawings being submitted.
In all honesty, I think the designs and the sketch plans that you provided, they probably hindered this application more than they provided good, because we're provided with something that, you know, the massing and the scale, it doesn't look like it's going to be in keeping. If this is to be superimposed, this frontal image onto the streetscape, I would be looking at this as you know, the design criteria is in the streetscape. This would not be in keeping.
Those sketches were actually, even though they're preliminary, I was dealing with the city as far as designing that. So, like, my hands were kind of tied and I was just kind of going along with it. That's not this, like, as I say, they were just preliminary to throw it out there, but, you know, I'm just trying to, I don't know. Say, I've done this in the past, and the final drawings were approved by the city. I was working in close relation to the city to design, and at the end of the day, on 2 or 3 separate occasions, I was congratulated by the neighbors on the look of the house. So, and I had no other intentions than to do my best on this one as well.
Well, we appreciate that, but we don't have any security. Once we pass this, there's no way for us to be sure that you're going to do that. You know, and so what we have to do is I've got 2 concerned residents here who have genuine concerns about the proposal that's in front of us. So at this point in time, I think we have a motion to defer with a request for further information to help us learn better on how this is going to be amassed, the impact against the neighboring residences. I don't know how staff will direct you to provide further information, but I think that would be up to them to find better scaling and massing the site, maybe some more concrete drawings or something like that, and how it could or will be developed, maybe some communication with the neighbors to ensure that, because they're the ones who are going to be living next to this, you know, some open communication with them would benefit the development of the site. And we have a motion on the floor.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have a motion on the floor to defer, and I will second that.
So the motion on the floor would be for 3 months or until you can get that information. Is that sufficient? You know what? Actually, I understand. You know what we'll do is we'll give you 9 months, deferral for 9 months to not encumber you, but you can come back as soon as you're ready. Once it meets the calendar and the timelines, you can come back in front of us. I'm not going to make it come back in 9 months, but you can come back as soon as things are ready with more information. All in favor?
Excuse me. May I have some information for the planning department?
You know, if you could take it up with planning staff now.
Yeah.
We've made a decision to defer, right? Express your concerns with planning
staff.
staff.
For your community too.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Okay.
Use the microphone, yeah.
I have a 3 copy for your community. I don't know if you have time to look over.
You know, give it to planning staff and they'll forward it on to us, okay?
Because I think they should concern that before we come to see it here.
Yep.
See if everybody
you know what?
can.
You know what? We're going to revisit this again, okay?
Okay.
So once again, we're asking for more information because I don't think any of us are comfortable making a decision.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. All right, application number 2018-029, 110, 130, and 136 Fergus Ave. Anybody in support or opposition? That's next, isn't it?
Mr. Chair, as I stated at the outset of this meeting, I have a conflict and I will leave the room.
All right. Okay, we're here to hear the application on 110, 130, 136 Fergus Ave. Everybody is in order now? We're good? Okay. I think what we're going to do is, everybody's had an opportunity to read the staff report, including anybody in the opposition. All right, I need everybody just to slowly and clearly state their name. We're going to start with the applicant and go through them, and then we're going to come over to the opposition, and we're going to just have the name and where you live well, in the case of the opposition, where you live. And we're going to start with the applicant, please.
Thank you. So my name is Michael Connell, and I'm counsel at Warefolds LLP, here for the applicant.
Great, thank you. Yeah, just all of you. All of you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Voss. I'm a planner and representing the applicant.
Paul Levesque, the applicant for Urban Legend Developments.
Nancy Hines, former board chair at EBC and also ad hoc committee on that.
I'm Stephen Roy. I'm the president of Emmanuel Bible College, the current property owner.
That's that guy. Great, thank you. And the opposition, please.
Serge Phillips, 117 Fergus Avenue.
Dave Calvert, 131 Fergus Ave.
Jennifer Wilson, 121 Fergus Avenue.
All right, thank you. All right, has everybody had an opportunity to read the staff report? I trust you all have. Staff are making a recommendation to refuse this application at this point in time. They're stating that there's insufficient information, and they're asking for a couple things. I would be happy to defer this at this point in time. Now, I'll give you guys an opportunity to speak, but right now, we got an application recommended to refuse. Staff are making recommendations. They're citing some pretty big concerns about lack of information to move this application forward, and they're making recommendation to refuse. I'm happy to hear it, but if we start this, we're going to go.
I think we have in the staff report, and it's actually why I'm here today, I think we have some fundamental confusions about the process we're involved in and the question that's being put to you, which is a minor variance application. I think what we're hoping to do is show you, with the support of the slide deck, that once it's understood as an appropriate Section 45 minor variance application, there are no outstanding information requirements. The confusion begins if we treat this as some kind of hybrid of a variance of the zoning and perhaps an OP change, etc. And it's a confusion and a disconnect that has hampered this application from the beginning, that begins with the pre-consultation meeting. It's our hope that by giving me a few minutes to speak at the outset, we can clarify what the application is, demonstrate to you that while staff may believe that they don't have all the information necessary, that's because they've been applying the wrong test. Once we understand it to be a Section 45 minor variance test, which you are incredibly familiar with, I believe you will be comfortable that you have sufficient information. Now, if those concerns continue, I would ask for the indulgence for us to consider whether a deferral is appropriate. But at this time, we would very much appreciate being able to make our presentation. We're prepared for it. We've been here all morning. If you're prepared to hear it.
Yeah, and the recommendation is to refuse, not for a deferral. I threw it a deferral, right? I just, sent one out there, okay? But we're here to, all right? So let's please continue. Let's hear you. All right. At this time, I know that things can get really lengthy, and, I'm such a kind and generous person. I let people run along a little bit long-winded sometimes. So we're going to start the shot clock here, because I think that's probably going to be appropriate in this case. I'm not a big fan of this, to do this, and that's why I don't ever turn it on. But considering the complexity of this, I want to make sure that, and concern of the residents, I want to make sure that we keep this in a timely fashion. So, okay. If you could be so kind to maybe give a 1 minute. What do we usually do? 5 minutes? Okay, 5 minutes. If you could probably give a 1 minute warning or something like that. And I understand the complexity of this site, and I probably will be generous. So.
Sorry, I just need a little bit more instruction. So you're suggesting that this deputation would be limited in its entirety to 5 minutes?
Did you get that?
I did. I'm a little bit, as you might imagine, a little bit frustrated that we can spend near an hour on variances applications, and this is a complicated application, albeit the test is simple. The evidence requires some attention to detail. It was my intention to clarify the legal test and why it's a minor application, and then to turn it over to our planner, who you'll be hearing from. So it's not the intention, unless questions arise, that you would hear from the other folks, but I just don't see any way that we could do justice to this within 5 minutes.
Well, tell you what, why don't you start? And you know what? Just be conscious of the time and
yes.
Where you're going with this, okay?
Yes, we will be very conscious of the time. Thank you. So as I suggested at the outset, one of the things that we believe leads to this recommendation for refusal is a kind of a fundamental legal error or confusion that began with the planning approach at the pre-consultation. And so what I'd like to do is be very, very clear at the outset that the zoning bylaw that applies to this site, so zoning bylaw number 85-1, specifically permits the proposed use. It specifically permits multiple dwellings and townhouses as of right. It's zoned community institutional, and it allows multiple dwellings. But if we look at the pre-consultation report, and I don't know if you have it in front of you, want to follow me, but I'll just tell you, I'm looking at page 3, and you'll see that despite the fact that this use is as of right, there's a suggestion that a zone change and official plan amendment would be required. That confusion has persisted despite our best efforts, and there's a letter from our firm in your package. And that letter, I think, sets out in great detail why the more onerous application process isn't required. And it's simple. It says I'm reading from page 3 of that letter, the in-force OP permits residential on the subject lands. The zoning bylaw specifically permits multiple dwellings and townhouse dwellings as of right. Since the redevelopment proposal only results in minor deviations from some of the performance standards, it's not suggesting a change in use, then a variance is appropriate. So it seems like between the pre-consultation and the staff report, that's somewhat cleaned up, because the staff report doesn't explicitly repeat the idea that an OPA is required. But it does suggest, when you get to page 3 for some reason, that this should be done through a zone change process. That is simply an error at law. That is an error to understand the rights which attach to zoning. Zoning gives you the as of right to build, and the Planning Act Section 45 makes it very clear that that can be extended so long as you meet the 4-part minor variance test. So it's our intention to remain very focused on the 4-part minor variance test. The second confusion or legal error that runs throughout the staff's approach to this, and it's related, I think staff have a misunderstanding of the law as it relates to when and how official plans come into force and effect. And I suspect this may be what you were seeking clarification on when you went in camera. Where we do have agreement with staff is that the institutional policies of the 2014 OP are not in force and effect because they are under appeal to the OMB. And I think that that's clear in the staff report. But because those policies are not in force and effect, it's not possible to run the minor variance test, i.e. whether or not you meet the general intent and purpose of the OP, by reference to the 2014 OP. Those policies are not in force and effect. So, and that's because, that's because the final form of the 2014 OP is unknown at this time. Those policies are under appeal, and the OMB has the authority to change them. So, the case law around this is fairly clear, and I'm hoping that you heard about the clergy principle when you were in camera. Where there is no in-force OP to replace the existing OP, however outdated, the OP that applies is the existing approved OP. And I think this is an important point, and I'm conscious of time, but I would like to read a little bit more about the clergy principle. The board has held, and for purpose of time, I may not cite every case, but the board has held that it's a well-established principle, and it is both an expedient and equitable practice that has stood the test of time and is one from which the board will not deviate. In determining the policy framework under which an application should be examined, the board has consistently stated that an application must be tested against the policy documents in place at the date of the application. The policies that staff are seeking to apply here, the institutional policies, are under appeal. It's another case, it is the well-established practice of the municipal board that policy prevailing at the time of the application is the one that must be applied. So long as the institutional policies remain under appeal, we have to be looking at the 1994 official plan. Again, the board, in a case called Dumart, a plan that was adopted but not approved after the application has been referred cannot impose significant new obstacles where the old plan is silent. By applying the new plan, the argument would be that the site has been redesignated to institutional and a whole new set of policies apply. Now, the problem with that is the institutional policies are under appeal. So, in order to address the fact that the policies, in fact, can't possibly be in force and effect, and I'm going to take you to the staff report on page 4, there's a novel and completely, I would say, not in keeping with the law, not in keeping with planning practice, and not even in keeping with common sense. I'd take you to the first full paragraph under official plan. While the institutional land use designation of these lands are in effect, the implementing policies, including specific uses, are under appeal. So I would say, yes, the mapping isn't under appeal, but mapping without policy is not intelligible. You can't make a decision about whether or not something meets the goals and objectives of a label on a map. You must have policies, and this is where the jump gets made, which doesn't work at law or in planning. So therefore, we're going to take the designation on the new OP, and we're going to apply the policies in the old OP, creating some kind of hybrid OP. The Act speaks to the official policy in place, not the hybrid. And it doesn't even work in logic because the new OP has an institutional designation, but the policy staff wants to reach to are the major institutional district policies in the old OP. OPs are to be read in their entirety, inclusively of the policies within them, but they are considered comprehensive, complete, and independent documents. You do not get to cherry pick from the OPs. You simply have to go with the OP that is in force and effect. The only policies that have the force of law with respect to this parcel are the 1994 OP's mixed-use node policies. Those are the policies that are relevant to the minor variance test, and those are the policies that you'll hear evidence on. Very quickly, the last two small, in light of that larger legal error, there are two additional problems, and I think they come about as a result of the fact that staff is deeply opposed to this application. There is the suggestion in the staff report that, and you find it on page 5, that this is somehow premature before there is a formal site plan application, and I'm looking at my slide 3. And I think this kind of ties into the conversation you just had. Zoning controls setback, height, floor space ratio, right? And we do have regulations, OREG 296, which tell us what information and material is to be provided in an application under Section 45 of the Act. And Mr. Chair, as you said earlier, it requires a sketch. It needs to give you the boundaries, dimensions of the subject land, location size, approximate location, etc. But this applicant has gone well beyond that. This applicant has actually provided the detailed design drawings, much more than is required. There's a conceptual site plan, there's elevations, there's massings, there's aerials, everything that could possibly be needed to understand the height, massing, etc. This is not a premature application. The full drawings that you will need as a committee to make a decision are before you. Finally, as a final note, in consultation with staff, there was ongoing discussion about the size and location of the park. Between the application and today, that park space has been expanded slightly. This has resulted in a reduction in the size of the variance required for FSR. So a smaller FSR variance is now being requested. Staff were asked, or the discussion led to the explanation that this would be put before the committee. And the suggestion was it is not possible to vary the application. The application before a committee will be as submitted. But that's not in accordance with the law either. The courts and the board have found that where no prejudice would result to any party by granting amendments without further notice, where the amendments proposed are more in keeping with the requirements of the bylaw. So it's a very small change. It is more in keeping with the bylaw. It meets staff requirements for the park plan, and it's actually where I understood Jennifer was going to start with you so that you would see the plan that we were actually bringing before you today for decision. Subject to your questions on that portion, I was going to turn it over to planning evidence.
Thank you.
Hi, I'll go through the, hopefully go through my variances or my justification for the variances quickly and respond to some of the comments in the staff report. So we did have a site plan pre-submission meeting back in November of 2017. As part of that pre-con meeting, there was Parks operations staff had asked for parkland dedication instead of cash in lieu. And at that meeting, we were also advised that a tree management plan was identified as part of a complete site plan application. They also had said at that site plan committee meeting that pre-con meeting, that a zoning amendment and official plan amendment was required if the site could not be designed according to the I-2 zone provisions. So therefore, we disagreed with that position, and as Michael has just provided you with our explanation, so we did not proceed to submit a site plan application because we would have required to submit a zone change and official plan amendment. So the variances were applied for with respect to what we're requesting and feel that it's reasonable, and all of the information that would have been provided as part of the site plan application was provided to staff. So with respect to the minor variance report, it indicates that variances required cannot be determined until parkland dedication and the woodlot status has been determined, both of which are necessary to calculate floor space ratio, setbacks, and parking. So the issue in the size and location of the park has been resolved with parks operations staff. The FSR has been calculated on lot area excluding the parkland. So if you look in your slide, I did provide the parkland that we agreed to with operations park staff It was expanded. We originally showed a park on our site plan application, but Parks Department required a larger area that resulted in where we had originally shown 11 parking spaces. We agreed to the size of this park. It has been enlarged to include 1.02 hectares to accommodate the city's park design. And we recalculated the FSR based on the approved location and size of the park. So as a result of the larger park, our original site plan changed, very minor. We squeezed the 4-story proposed apartment building in the center, which resulted in allowing for the larger park, which also allowed some additional area of parking.
Quick question. Do you have site plan approval or approval in principle?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you.
So on our original site plan, our FSR was, we were applying for 0.85, and in order to accommodate the park, the FSR is now 0.848. A very minor change in the application. So as part of the changes to the site plan, the 11 parking spaces that were originally shown at the side of the park were relocated. No additional increases for variances are proposed as a result of the changes to the site plan to accommodate the park. In terms of the tree management plan, a tree management plan is not required to calculate FSR, setbacks, or parking, and will be provided at the site plan submission, consistent with the requirements of the city's council-adopted tree management policy, and is indicated as being required as part of a complete site plan application. As well, in terms of the severance application, the Emmanuel Bible College received severance approval from Committee of Adjustment back in November, I believe, of 2017. As part of the condition of consent, a tree management preservation enhancement plan is required for both the severed and retained lands. As indicated in the consent application that was submitted, the retained portion of the lands to be severed contains a remnant upland woodland, which is identified for retention on the approved site plan. Environmental planning staff at the time indicated that they will require the continued retention of the woodland on the retained lands. As incorrectly indicated in the minor variance staff report, there is no outstanding woodlot status on the severed lands. A tree preservation enhancement plan is required to identify all existing trees to be retained, relocated, and removed, as well as an assessment of the value of the vegetation proposed to be removed, and compensation plan plantings will be a part of our site plan application. So in terms of the site plan, the minor variance staff report indicates that the requested variance to support to the setbacks. So the side yard variance we're requesting building height and floor space ratio are premature as supporting plans and a formal site plan application have not been applied for. As part of the pre-con comment, staff indicated a zone change and official plan amendment would be required to increase the FSR and decrease parking if the site cannot be redesigned to meet the required parking zoning regulations. Sorry. So that's why our site plan application, we couldn't submit a site plan application because staff was saying we required a ZBA OPA, which we disagree with. So the supporting plans were submitted in support of the proposed variances, including a planning justification letter, detailed design report including a proposed site plan, yield analysis, underground parking layout, apartment and townhouse floor plans, townhouse block elevations, massing perspectives, and aerial views. There is another note in the staff report about servicing constraints. As part of the pre-con meeting, engineering staff advised that full engineering SPA will not be granted prior to the commissioning of new force mains associated with the recently upgraded Freeport Sanitary Pumping Station. At our pre-submission meeting, we were advised that we could submit our site plan application, and by the time the site plan application was approved, the application would not be considered premature because the construction of the force mains are imminent. We have noted that the tender for the new Forts mains closes this Thursday, with construction scheduled for the summer of 2008 and commissioning expected in the fall of this year. So it's our understanding there are no servicing constraints that would necessitate the requirement of an H. If, however, the additional...
Be very conscious of time here. You know, you guys have provided a lot of information last minute at us. You're throwing a lot of stuff at us. So wrap it up, please.
Okay. So I guess the rest of my presentation just basically outlines the justification we provided to staff to support the 4 tests of the variance, and to demonstrate how we have how the requested variances. So we require a side yard variance of 0.25 meters. 6.25 meter side yard requirement is required. We're proposing a 6 meter. We provided the necessary justification for that. Maximum building height, same thing. We look at the designation within the official plan and the fact that the I-2 zoning permits a maximum height of 15.3 meters for buildings, for example, a retirement home or the college, the Emmanuel Bible College. The I-2 zone permits up to 15.3 meters in height with an FSR of 1. So it basically demonstrates that the scale and the massing is already established as being permitted within that I-2 zone.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to flip over to the opposition and just quickly to run through some of your concerns about this site, and if you could please keep it short and sweet if you can.
Sure.
We'll start to my right or to the left, and we'll move through each one of you. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Serge Phillips again, 117 Fergus. Just seeing the staff report this morning, quickly reading through it, a lot of the concerns of neighbors have been addressed in there, looking at refusing. We did do a walk around because the notice that was posted only came to 12 residents, which might be the way it has to be around the border of the property. But this project affects more than just the 12 homes around Bible College.
If you could please submit that survey or the residential sign sheet, if you would, please.
Sure. Our petition.
Yeah. Once you get that, you don't. Once you give it to us, you don't get it back, eh?
Okay. I guess the size of the project and the uncertainty around a lot of the other projects that have been discussed or talked about or known about, like 1333 Weber, the Howard Johnson site, and the 544 condo there, and the Knights Inn, along with the additional occupants that are going to be in the neighborhood affecting traffic. We were concerned about the traffic, if a traffic study is needed for this project. And because we have some cases and examples of some serious accidents that have happened along the street with speeds of between 90 and 105 kilometers, and that was through law enforcement that let us know about that. So I would, without reiterating everything that staff has recommended and looking to refuse, I would really like to see this committee go with the staff report and refuse this project.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, like he said, there's a lot of traffic on that street already, and I think it'd be inappropriate to build on that institutional zoned land a residential project. The institutional land is made for a community enhancement, not for a residential development. So we would like to see something more along the lines of maybe a community center or something. If you're going to build such a large apartment complex, it should be built on residential land and zoned for it. As per the staff report, it says there's inefficient sewage, there's inefficient parking, and inefficient green space. Now, most of the neighborhood uses that green space for recreation, walking the dogs, so be it. And currently, there's 4 people living across the street from me and them, as opposed to potentially 500 people living across the street from us. And that's the impact to the community, the property value associated with the position of, or the location of the development. And we'd like to see that land used for something more appropriate as opposed to just a housing development. Now, I don't understand or know what they're using this development for. Is it for some sort of humanitarian effort? Like, is it just a regular apartment building collecting rent? If so, why is it being built on institutional land, as it should be built on some sort of residential property? As we already have a lot of problem with people in the community in well, I guess I don't even know if it would be covered under government housing, because there's a lot of co-op government housing in that neighborhood already. So is this project being funded by the government, or is it being funded by the developer as to be like a rent collection, just like a regular apartment building? Sorry.
Through me, it's a private development, and it is zoned residential. A portion of the land is zoned residential.
But the majority of the building is being built on the institutional zone property, correct?
No. The lands are zoned residential. They're asking for minor variances to the zoning bylaw. They would be here for a zone change amendment in front of council instead of here in front of the Committee of Adjustment for a minor variance is what they're looking for. Okay, so they're varying the existing zoning. So they're not doing a zone change, they're just varying the existing zoning to have allowances for the proposed development.
But it's being built on institutional zoning?
No, it's being built on residential lands. It's already zoned.
Because the map I have states is institutional too.
Through the chair, that is correct. All the lands that are zoned institutional, they have a split designation. The land zoned R4 will not be built on.
Okay, thank you for that. So there's split zoning on it, so it means it is residential and institutional. Okay, so basically you can build institutional on it or you can build residential on it. It's not normally the practice, but it does happen on certain cases. If staff would like to elaborate why it has split zoning.
Mr. Chair, through you, I would like to chime in on this just for a moment, and maybe a question to staff. In the report, actually from Weir Folds, it states that, let me just sort of get it to here, that the property portion that is designated as institutional does not permit residential uses. Can you clarify that for me? Because in my experience, I-2 zoning does permit residential.
That would be the zoning. We're referring to the 1994 policies from the major institutional policies that do not permit multiple dwellings unless it's in association with institutional uses.
Which it is not.
Okay, all right. We hear you, okay? Next.
So my name is Jennifer, and I live at 121 Fergus Avenue. And I think just as a community, we have spoken to a number of the community members. So as my fellow speakers said, there was only 12 notices that went out, and it will drastically affect the neighborhood. It will drastically affect the parking that is currently available on both sides of the street. It's a narrow street. There's been multiple issues with speeding. There's been multiple accidents. We're wondering if there's been a traffic study done on this particular street, for the simple fact that a few years ago, Kinsey Avenue had speed bumps put on it because of the speeding, but everybody just seemed to move to Fergus Avenue.
That'd be a question for city staff. I don't know if there's traffic calming measures on that street or not, but the idea, well, or projected or proposed traffic calming measures are for that street. But you know how that happens is through residential complaints, making city staff aware of it. That's how you bring attention to that kind of thing. Do you have anything further?
I do. There is currently a nursing home and some older age facilities in and around the area that they're proposing to put this project on. And there is a number of people on a daily basis, elderly people, who are walking on this street. There is a bus stop 400 meters away from it, there is kids that continuously walk. With this kind of traffic and this type of a building, I fear for safety. We all have children along here, and I'm concerned about people coming and going. I'm concerned with, we have not seen any plans whatsoever for this project.
Yep, okay. We've been at this for a half an hour. I think we've heard a lot. I do have a question for Mr. Seller. Was or is a traffic study to be imposed upon this? It doesn't look like that was it requested for this, or are you in that position?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would be something we would do through the zone change process. We would ask for a TIS if it was warranted at that time.
Okay, thank you very much. So the staff report states that planning doesn't like it, building has no comments, transportation has insufficient information, engineering has insufficient information, operations has insufficient information, and environmental has insufficient information. So pretty much those are all of our go-to people to make recommendations to us. It's not like just one of them have come up and said, well, we don't like this, but I go through my list, and each one of them has different ideas and requests for further information. You know, and I understand some of the legalities of it and where we're sitting, but the bottom line is this committee is here to weigh in and look after the community. That's why we're here. That's why they put us layman's on the board here. That's why we're nominated by council to sit here, is so that we do not take the professional opinion, that we actually look and consider what the residents have to say and the best thing for what our city is supposed to be as a resident of the city. Mr. McCall, do you have any comments?
Well, I would only point out that there
Mr.
are...
McCall, do you
I'm
have
sorry,
any
my apologies.
comments? Thank you.
My name is Connell. I misheard.
I got you, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a very complex application. It's unfortunate that some of the pertinent information did not get through till today. Overall, I think this is a good concept, but it's missing some important info. Some of this should have been ironed out with staff before it came to the Committee of Adjustment. There's new information on parkland, there's new information on tree management, there's issues with parking. There may even be some question as to whether it's appropriate zoning. These questions should have been addressed more comprehensively from the applicant to city staff prior to it coming to the Committee of Adjustment. So, Mr. Chair, at this point, because there is so much new stuff that appeared today, and there's still an uncertainty amongst staff as to information that is required, I'm going to suggest, Mr. Chair, actually, I'm going to move that this be deferred with the hope that the applicant can sit down with staff and resolve some of these issues before coming back to us. Some of the variances are very minor, some are not, but the whole lack of procedural information flow is what I see lacking in this application. So, Mr. Chair, I'm moving that it be deferred.
Thank you. Well, I guess we'll take a vote. All in favor? Okay. No, yeah, deferral. Well, that's only you. That's not enough. If you know what, I could see a deferral could happen here. I could see a deferral could happen here if. Oh, sorry. I could understand a deferral if there was one concern here. There's a multitude of concerns. There's a lack of information. I cannot warrant deferring this application with such little information and such blatant staff opposition because of lack of information. You know, I don't even know if this is considered minor. So at this point in time, the deferral is, I don't believe the deferral is the process, because all you're going to end up doing is they're going to end up back here in a month or 60 days. Most of this stuff is still going to be outstanding. Staff's position is not going to change. Even if they provide further information, we're still not going to compile anything. They're not going to get the end result that they want. I don't think that this is the process which they should be going through to get to what they need. So I tend to lean with staff at this point.
Okay, Mr. Chair, then I guess the question is, overall, is this, okay, let me restate my position. I think from a standpoint of redevelopment within, as an infill, and the provincial policy statement and the places to grow and the requirement for more housing, I think in general this is a good concept, but there are some wrinkles in it that need to be ironed out. And I'm actually hoping that a deferral of 60 days or maybe 90 days or sooner if the applicant would like, you got to iron these things out with staff. I'm in complete agreement with you, Mr. Chair, that when pretty well everyone on staff says that they need more information, well, I think staff is right. They need more information in order to make a reasonable recommendation to us. Maybe through you, Mr. Chair, to ask staff, would a deferral allow you folks to come to some kind of understanding with the applicant? Or is it just not possible?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe our position is clear. We've recommended a refusal on the application. We feel it's premature to be making any kind of decision on this application today with the information that we have.
And I'm agreeing with the staff position that you don't have that information and you can't make a recommendation without that information. So what I'm hoping for here is that that information comes forward to staff and staff can take another look at it. And if at the end of the submission of new information, if you are still in the position of refusal, I'm just trying to find a way how the applicant can move forward with some of this and clean up the areas of confusion and misconceptions.
Well, I think you heard clearly from staff that their opinion is as stated as in the staff report, and it's a recommendation to refuse this application. I do agree with you, Mr. McCall, that I think that it is a good land use in what they're proposing. It's just the way that they're trying to get there is kind of short-circuiting the system on how it's supposed to be. And once again, I'm going to reiterate that I'm not sure that this is minor in nature because of the lack of information. It is a extensive, if you came in front of me and you had site plan approval or approval in principle or something like that, and you had more information, you did your traffic study, you did your tree study, I could probably jump on board with this pretty quickly. But because there's lack of information, I cannot support this. How am I supposed to get behind this and know that my community is out there and they don't like it? The site is potentially overbuilt, but I don't have any of my professional staffs making recommendation of approval. In fact, I've got all of them making recommendation to refuse or provide further information. This is, you come back in front of me, I'd be happy to hear you guys, and I probably would approve it. But come back to me with some support. You don't even have any support. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like you don't even have not one of the people that we rely on. It's like these are the professionals who come to us day in, day out, who we have to rely on their opinions to make these decisions. You got 1 minute.
With respect to the dispute is not over the adequacy of the policy the information per se. The dispute is over how to characterize the application. There are 4 variances being requested. You only heard from about 2 of them. 0.25 meter setback is the variance requested. Instead of 12.5 meter height instead of 10.5 meter height. Parking variation. They are, if staff was looking for the information to evaluate those variances as under the minor variance test, that material is all there. If staff is looking to require the information you would get with an official plan amendment application and a zoning bylaw amendment application, it is a much more onerous test, much more difficult test, much more information. But with respect, we're seeking only minor variances from the as-of-right condition. So that's the impasse with staff. It's not an unwillingness to continue to discuss and to provide information. It's the characterization of the application.
Okay, so then it sounds pretty easy to me. Come back to me with more information, come back to the planning staff, provide them the more information that they require, then come back to this committee. You know, what's, I don't understand, you know, staff is still going to, if you can make staff happy and then you can come back here, you know what, I'll give you 6 months, I'll side with Bob right now and I'll vote for a deferral for 6 months, right? You got 6 months to try and make staff happy. And I can tell you this right now, I'm not going to be long-winded, I'm not going to be listening to a long-winded argument next time. You guys are going to have 5 minutes total, okay? So, motion on the board, defer. You got 6 months. All in favor? Done.
Thank you.
At this juncture, Mr. Chair, can we take a brief recess?
Yeah, recess. Thank you.
Okay, see what they want.
So just so you know, I'm assuming that 121 burgers.
All right, we're going to pick this back up. If anybody is missing, we'll give them a minute or two or something like that. This is for application number B2018-0162 Chapel Hill Drive. There's been an email notice sent around for request for a deferral, and the staff report is also acknowledging a defer. So at this point in time, can I get a motion?
Motion to defer the application B 2018-16.
All in favor? No, thank you. Give them 3 months? 3 months? Okay. Yeah, perfect. All right, application B 2018-017 and 1819, 83 Elmsdale Drive. Anybody in support or opposition? Good morning. Afternoon.
Good morning, or afternoon, yes.
Yeah, we've been here a while.
My name's Heather Price. I'm with GSP Group on behalf of the applicant.
Great, and we're going to go to the opposition. Just please state your name and where you live.
I'm Kim Burrows. I live at 60 Elmsdale, Unit 12, right on the street across from the 83.
Okay, to help expedite this, I know that the committee here has heard this application before, and we're just relapsing something that's already been through this committee a couple times. And I just want to hear, just quickly, what are your concerns with this?
It's the first we heard of it. We've lived here for about 1.5 years now. I know the parcel B and C have been designated into whatever they're being built at. We're concerned about parcel A, the parkland, I believe is parcel A. No? Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The Elmsdale Park is actually north of the site. So parcel is quite large. The whole parcel is quite large, and it's to be divided to create parcel A adjacent to the park. Just south of the park.
That still would be
Mr. Chairperson, from what my understanding is, that would still be cutting off about half of the park. And our community was just designated with a $150,000 grant to upgrade the park so that we can increase the community involvement, the safety for our children. And I don't understand why we'd be cutting off half of the park, especially if we are planning to add to it.
Okay, if you look at the last page of the air photography map, you'll note that it shows the subject lands which are under application, and it also shows you where the Elmsdale Park is. There's no plans. I'm quite certain that this is a separate parcel that you're referring to. It's they will not be taking any of the parkland away from that park area. The property limits of the park will be maintained.
Okay. I do have further concerns. I became a homeowner on Elmsdale Drive in September 2016. I was not involved or informed of the information in December 2016. I would have been appreciated for that. I'm concerned about the fact that I was under the understanding when purchasing my home that this parcel A and B were going to be and C were going to be designated for a retirement home, and now it seems to be a townhouse. I'm not sure where the change came from.
Maybe the applicants can speak to that.
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair. This site has been kind of under development for quite a while. It goes back to 2013, I think, was the earliest application. And at that time, the application was to provide a mix of uses. And back at that time, there was a retirement concept, a retirement building as a potential development option that was shown on what is now Parcel B. Since that time, the market has changed somewhat, and as you can imagine, the delays related to the cleanup of the site that's causing us to keep returning here to create the parcels. Due to that ongoing work, there has been a change for Parcel B from what was a retirement concept to townhouses. Both uses are permitted within the zoning bylaw that was established.
It would have been convenient to understand that when I was purchasing my home. Also, missing out on the December last meeting, I'm confused as to why it's taken so many times to go through council and this committee. This is the fourth time. I don't understand why even a year and a half ago we couldn't have gotten this, almost 2 years ago now, we couldn't have gotten this dealt with then.
What has happened is they didn't meet the conditions for their first approval, and it has a 1-year time limit, and after 1 year they have to reapply.
Right.
So this has happened a few times. This is a very complicated site. There's a lot of complications going on. You've got market and the development, and trying to work through with city staff to make sure that the development comes into accordance with all the plans and policies. It is a very complicated process, and I'm sure if you did a little bit of research, you'd have a little bit of understanding on why it is such a complicated process, and it takes a long time to get things through. Sometimes, it can be as simple as studies on the environment that require 3 seasons, and you can't process any further until that study is completed. So those are some of the limitations. This here, I do believe it's just trying to figure out with the city staff the final designs, get it through the approval of site plan control, et cetera, et cetera. Ms. Von Westerholt?
Actually, I just wanted to add, it's the remediation process that is taking the time, and this is not something that can often fit within a 1-year time frame. And because of the nature of the site and the uses that were on the site beforehand, to clean up the site so that it is suitable for any type of redevelopment, particularly residential, whether it be in the form of townhouses or whether it be in the form of a residential care facility. Either way, it has to meet government requirements under provincial legislation, and that's just taking time to get there. And because of the 1-year time frame, for creation of the lots, they were unable to fulfill that within that time frame.
I hope that answers your questions.
Mr. Chair, I might ask the committee to recognize the individual sitting next to me. I think that they might be neighbors and might want to be noted for the record.
My name is Hae-sun Jung. I'm living in unit number 11, 230 Blackcomb Drive. Actually, I briefly saw about this application this morning. My opinion is just simple opinion about that. Actually, I just see that the area just has been sitting just empty for a few years. So, just in my opinion, if we can develop any type of buildings and townhouses or whatever, it affects good mood for that area, because so many times we can watch about the police cars and then bylaw cars often showing off in that area. So if we could get more new environment in there, it could be good effects for that area. That's my opinion.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm her husband. I have same idea. I live in other end of the McLennan Park, so whenever we walk in that area, we really enjoy the greens and space. But when we see the empty lot, it's been a couple of years, so it doesn't brought positive impact for the neighbor. So I would prefer whatever it would be used for something positive for the neighbor.
That's what we're trying to do here, or they're trying to do, and obviously there's been some contaminants built on the lands over the years when it was the former Kitchener City Works Yard. Contaminants are that, and basically we have got dirty dirt, dirty soil, and they need to go through a process to clean that. That's why there's a giant hole there. They've literally dug up and removed all the contaminated soil. They're putting a good fill soil into it. I think it's probably being quite a challenge because it's right beside an old dump, and to be able to come back with a clean site, they're going to probably need to go through a risk assessment. But the whole process takes some time to get a clean site. That site is going to be developed, and it is probably going to be something quite nice once it's actually done. But the question is, we just have to go through the due process as legislated by the provincial government on how to make sure that we're building places that are appropriate and going to be beneficial for the health and welfare of everybody in our community. Yes.
Just one more question. So has the parcel A already been divided off?
That's what they're here to do. They've had approvals. They've had approvals. I think it's 3 or 4 times previous to sever their lands. It's going to allow them to either sell or to redevelop the lands separately, so they don't have to. Or it's an effort for financials. It becomes a numbers game, right? And they can do. There's a bunch of reasons why. But they've had approvals 3 times. 3 times or 4?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
3 times before, and this is, because of the time lapse and because of the other regulations that they have to follow, we're back in front of the committee again. Nothing's changed from the approvals that they've had previously. So it has not. It was approved to sever those lands, and then because they didn't meet the time constraints, because of other factors that we've already noted, that they're back in front of us again, getting the same severance applications to sever the lands again. And basically, it's still within that fenced area. I believe all the lands are within the fenced area, and it's what you see. The park is not being, and will not be. Yeah. Pardon me.
Not much. Like there'll be roadway back there, but not much. But parcel A will be actually taken.
No, are you saying that, and we're just trying to understand here, that parcel A and B is already contained within the fence that's sitting there?
A, B, and C are all within the fence limits. The entire property is fenced off, right? That's basically for security, trespassers, and things like that. I think that probably alleviates all your concerns right there, doesn't it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. From my committee members, can we get a motion or a question or comment?
I have some questions and comments, first of all. I agree with the residents who are here on this side of the room that the development will be a significant improvement from what's there today. I don't know that anyone can argue with that. I do share some concerns or have some concerns with the number of times that this has been back to the committee. It could be seen at some point as an abusive process. I would hope that the applicants are prepared to proceed at this stage, because this is a public process. You're pulling the public in every time you come back here, and they have the right to be heard, and they have the right to ask their questions. So I would hope that if you're here seeking this relief or these severances from the committee, that you're now prepared to proceed. And finally, and otherwise, I have no concerns with this application. Obviously, it's been before the committee before, and I'm prepared to support it. But I do have one question. One of the residents did suggest that at one point they had understood that the application was for retirement living, and now it's being proposed for townhouses. So this application there's no proposed change in use. The uses are permitted that are being proposed, but I'm just wondering if the applicant can speak to or maybe clarify why there is this perception that there's a change in use of some sort.
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair. The applications I was referring to that go back as far as 2013 were an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment application that went to council and were approved. Those changes were to allow the change from what was formerly a municipal works yard to allow for mixed use. In support of that application, the applicant submitted a number of development concepts and layouts that included a range of land uses to demonstrate the intent and the vision for the ultimate redevelopment. And at that time, there was a retirement building as one of the development concepts. Since that time, as I mentioned earlier, the design vision for Parcel B has changed somewhat. It's only Parcel B where there was a retirement concept shown, and now the thinking is that that would be better suited for townhouses.
Councillor.
Great, thank you. I think we've probably heard enough. Can we have a motion and maybe move this on?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chair, through you to actually the neighbors. A development of this scale can take a long period of time, especially if it's on a brownfield. The applicant has been here a number of times before, and I echo my colleague's concern that this has been dragging on for quite some time. Does the applicant have any, and maybe I'm not even permitted to ask this question, but do you have any kind of hypothetical timeline on when you're going to be breaking ground?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the owner would very much like to break ground as soon as they get the letter in hand from the ministry, from the province, that it's clean and suitable for residential use. This is one of the many steps that have to be put in place in order to allow that to happen, to sever the lot into developable sized parcels, because it is quite large. I can also share that there has been work done on the townhouse concept at the corner of Parcel B to allow that one to be the first to break ground. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, seeing this as just a reaffirmation of what has been done back in 2013, 2015, and 2016, and it's really just renewing what was already discussed at that point in time. Mr. Chair, I move that this be approved with the conditions, the pages of conditions that are in the staff report.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do have one question further for the applicant. You indicated there was an indication that you're just waiting on the record of site condition. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct.
And what is the timing, the anticipated timing of that? Because that seems to be what's tying up the whole process.
Through you, Mr. Chair, you're absolutely right. That is the key element that's tying up the whole process, and the timing, unfortunately, is unknown. I have said at this committee before that we were optimistic we would hear a response within the year. I would like to be able to say that again. There have been rounds of feedback through the ministry, and I think we are now down to the short strokes in getting that final clearance.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Another point of clarification, if I may, Mr. Chair. You indicated that the application, the concept has changed from retirement to townhouse on Block A?
Block B.
Block B, pardon me. And were those revised concepts part of the December 2017 application? 2016 application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have the 2016 application before me, but I believe it was submitted in a similar fashion as what was submitted with this application, which is just to identify the parcels to be created and the extent of the easements that are needed for the roadway and servicing. So it did not contain a land use plan, a site plan. It only, this application only contained the parcel fabric and the easements.
If I may, Mr. Chair, for a severance, you don't need land use planning.
So we have a motion on the floor for pages of conditions.
Mr. Chair, the point of clarification is because under the Planning Act, when you apply for a severance, you have to show that it's not premature and you have to understand the uses that are proposed for the severance. So that is why I ask. However, this is a reiteration of something the committee has previously approved. I'm going to second the motion, but I just wanted to be clear that that was why the question was asked. And it is always important that when you bring an application for severance before the committee, that the committee have a fulsome understanding of what's being proposed.
I'd also like to note on that there is regional conditions on here, and we're going to go with on the staff report instead of pages of conditions as per the staff report for the minutes. All in favor? Great, thank you. All right, application number B 2018-020, 334 King Street, and 2018-032, 352 King Street, and 400 King Street. If anybody's in support or opposition, please join us.
Hello again. I'm here also for this application. It's Heather Price for the record.
They're making a recommendation to approve the severance subject to certain conditions. Do you have any questions or comments with regards to this?
No, Mr. Chair. We've reviewed the report in full and the proposed conditions with respect to the severance application, and we have no objections.
Is there any questions or comments from the committee members? Yep. Okay, well, I'll just go ahead. Why are we severing this?
Mr. Chair, the owner has acquired the 3 parcels under the same ownership, and as such, they've merged on title into one parcel. The owner has been advancing a site plan application for the parcel to be proposed to be severed as part of this application, and one of the conditions of that site plan approval in principle is to create a legal lot. So that's the reason we're before you today.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Mr. McCall, do you have any questions or comments?
Nope.
Mr. Chair, I don't either. So with that, I will move to approve applications B 2018-20, A 2018-32, subject to the conditions set out in the staff report.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to applaud Mr. McCall on his monosyllabic answer.
Thank you.
All in favor? So. All right, application number 2018-021, 2018-022, 2018-023-37, and 45 Hyman Street. If anybody's in support or opposition, would they please join us? All right. Thank you. Currently, we're here with this application in front of us for several lots. Everybody had an opportunity to read the staff report?
Yes, we have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and let's just start with our introductions. I know we know who some of us are.
Scott Patterson with LaBreche Patterson and Associates, acting on behalf of the applicant.
Yep.
Sean O'Neill, the applicant.
And then opposition, if you could please state your name and where you reside.
Richard Hole, 9 Tamroth Close. And this is my wife, Lynn.
Terrific, thank you. You know, we're going to start with the opposite. Actually, you know what? If Mr. Patterson would run us through the application quickly, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I understand you've had a long meeting. So the applications before you are for a lot addition to take lands from 37 Hyman Street and add them to 45 Hyman Street. So the lot addition would have to occur first. Then the 2 subsequent applications, 22 and 23, are to further sever 45 Hyman Street after that to create lots, 3 lots in total, 2 of which would be for single detached dwellings and 1 of which at the corner, which would be for a semi-detached dwelling. We have reviewed the staff report. We're in agreement with the conditions as provided. I would like to discuss one of the conditions. I can reserve doing that until after the other members have...
You have the microphone now. Just, put it out there and we'll get right back to it, okay?
Sure. So with regard to the conditions associated with application 22 and 23, and this goes back to a discussion that occurred previous today, and it's something that has been a concern of mine as well. As part of the conditions, there's a requirement for a site plan in support of single detached dwellings and the semi-detached dwelling, and as previously noted, there is no requirement for site plan approval in support of such developments. The lots being proposed meet the zoning regulations for lot area, lot frontage. We're not seeking any minor variances to adjust any of the setbacks, building height, lot coverage, or anything like that. So I would respectfully suggest that the R6 zoning is what will govern and direct the houses that will be constructed on those lots. For us to be required to submit a site plan application of any kind is onerous. It's a review process that's not really applicable for the development of this type of dwelling or unit. And I would respectfully suggest that condition 5 of both 22 and 23 should not be supported by the committee. Now that being said, if the committee feels that this is of concern and there's a potential for any deferral or refusal, we would accept the conditions the way they are written. So I would just throw that out there as a comment on conditions 5 for your consideration that they may not be appropriate given what we're asking for.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to turn this over to the opposition and give you an opportunity. Can you, have you had a chance to read the staff report?
Yes, I did. I've been living at 9 Tamroth since '91. When I purchased my property, there was basement water concerns that was coming in. I talked to my neighbor beside me on the corner at number 5, and he had worse issues. His backyard didn't dry out till probably about June, and it flooded because he really doesn't have outlet on that lot at all. It's lower than the street. It's lower than my property, and when you would take 37 Hyman into effect, that's built up quite high as well. According to what we did, I replaced my driveway and I did concrete courtyard in my backyard, and we did a retaining wall. What we did was run tile that he had outlet on number 5 underground on my property. That takes his entire house roof. It takes my backyard. It takes my garage. And it takes on 15 Tamroth, it takes their water off of their garage, goes out the back corner of my retaining wall. Plus, there is a catch basin right at the outlet point, which the water flows back half of my driveway, the entire courtyard, and goes out that corner as well. I'm not a water expert on this, but I don't think I'm too far off on a heavy rainfall that we're looking at 600 to 800 gallons goes down through that corner into the watershed. Another concern of mine is as far as the trees are concerned. They're definitely supporting some of the backyards on Tamroth. A lot of the fences are shifting out because of erosion. Fortunately enough, I took care of that problem on my own because it was doing the same thing, pushing the fences out, and the retaining wall definitely did help. 5 Tamarath does not have any more water issues. 9 Tamarath doesn't have any more issues, which is my property. And 15, what we couldn't understand, I addressed this this information to come here today. What did they think of their letter? According to them, they never even received anything, and this definitely does affect them. Unfortunately, Mrs. Weiler, she was here for the first 2 hours this morning. She had to get called back to work. She stayed here for 2 hours and she had to get back. Mr. Walker on the corner, number 5, he did get a letter reviewing this issue. His concerns are much like mine in a way, and on the bright side of this scale, as far as Mr. Walker on 5 and me on 9, with the right landscape, it might help his property as well. I'd imagine you're considering taking the old stone retaining wall down along the side of 37. If that comes down, it's going to help some of his water issues, and if the land that's higher on 37 addressing into my property, if it's lower, it's going to help not having a flooded garage. Now, as far as the garage is concerned...
To discuss the water issues, okay, there's only a couple... Hold on. There's only a couple things that we can deal with as far as water issues, right? Well, we're here looking at the property that is under application. We can't look at the water issues of the neighboring properties or anything like that. Part of the rules and regulations for doing any new development, especially in this case, is that one of the rules, and it states it right here in the conditions of approval, is that the owner may provide a servicing plan showing outlets to the municipal servicing systems. So what that means is, and then this is to the satisfaction of the Director of Engineering. So that means they have to submit plans and engineering drawings showing where all the water outlets from the roof, from the garages, wherever it may be, and how the water is going to be controlled on site, and that it's not going to be projected onto any neighboring properties. It's going to be put into the municipal system. Okay, so literally, if you've got a neighbor who's draining water onto your property, he's not allowed to do that.
Okay.
It's one of the laws and the rules that are part of the most city bylaws out there.
So he basically sits in a swimming pool in his backyard because he doesn't have outlet on number 5. Like, what is he supposed to do? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if he's outletting onto your property, he's not supposed to do that. It should be directed towards the street to go into the municipal systems. Okay. That's where the water should be outletting. And, there's some percolation that goes into the backyards and things like that. There's some roof runoff, drains run into the backyards, but it should be to the volume. And there's an engineering calculation where they look at the metric volumes to make sure that whatever is running off of it is going to be percolated in the backyard space, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to be dumping all of your entire roof out into the backyard and it rolling over onto your neighbor's property, right? That's just not good engineering.
Yeah, what I'm saying here too is if a new house goes on 37, which is the proposal, right? If that elevation changes to be lower with the street, it would definitely help out a lot of situations if that's what the plan is.
Let's ask the applicant if he's proposing to make any elevation changes, or if it's even known at this point in time. But I'm sure if it's going to be conducive to the benefit of his property, that there would probably be some consideration there.
Another issue is the trees as well. We got some century-old pines back there all the way along and 80-foot tall, and they're thriving quite well on the property that they're planning to build on or do something with. Tamarath Close, basically, according to the older lines, was basically built in a water hole.
The Region of Waterloo, they're asking for a scope EIS. So that means an environmental impact study. And what they're going to do is they're going to be asking him to provide I'm just trying to find where I read that.
Yeah.
Sorry, condition 7. So the region's asking for the scoped EIS. Sorry, I was not looking under condition 7. And they're going to make an environmental impact study to determine the development, and they're going to evaluate the trees, the birds and the bees, and everything like that. So there is going to be the environmental concerns are going to be at least taken into consideration. They're going to look at any impacts prior to allowing development. This is part of the process he's got to go through.
Like that type of stuff too. People come and sit on my back deck and they can't believe it. They say, you got trees back there, the wind's blowing through it, you're out in the country. And I said, yeah, but someday, maybe not. And I just want to say to the developers as well that anytime you want to talk to me or explain your views, your neighbors. And I'm willing to help you out if you can help me out, and we can address a lot of problems without going through a lot of procedures. And I think that can be done, and hopefully it can. And the big issue I have is the drainage issue. That's the lowest point of that corner, and we got a lot of water running through there. And
well, the engineering aspect will take this into complete consideration, and the only thing they can and are obligated to do is maintain and engineer the stuff that is on their site, so it doesn't go onto the adjacent sites. That is mandated by law. Okay,
Yeah.
so they have to make sure that everything is encompassed and maintained on their site.
One more thing, and I'm going to pass it on, is on my actual land description. The last one, this one here was done in 86. Where my line fence comes across, there's a variance there of 2.5 past the fence and 1.9 at the other corner. What is that? It's drawn in a solid line around it.
Does it say Part 1, Plan 58R 15079 on it?
Like the fence line has X's and then it's right solid behind it. I don't understand what it actually is. Is it for floodplain or what is it? Listen here. The fence is on the line, on the X's.
And what is your question, sir?
What's this additional line? What's this different?
This is showing just the distance to the property line from this point.
Okay.
The 1.1 foot 9 inches,
Okay.
and that's 2 foot 5
Okay,
inches.
so the solid line down here doesn't mean anything? No.
The solid line is your property line.
The solid line is my property line?
Yep.
Right here?
That's right.
Okay, my fence is back here, so basically...
It's offset from the property line.
Okay, so that is my property, in other words, then? Yep, okay, thank you. That helps.
All right, I hope that answers your question and you understand some of your rights and what is there now. Does the applicant want to talk about elevation changes to the proposed development? Are there going to be any? Is there anything like that? And with regards to the stone retaining wall that is existing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as part of this proposal, the existing dwellings will have to be removed. The existing house on 37 Hyman Street will actually, the new lot line will go through that house, so it will have to be demolished. Naturally, we'll have to go through demolition control for that, and we'll also have to seek a demolition permit from the City of Kitchener. Through the demolition permit, you're required to provide pre- and post-grading plans. So in the interim condition, on-site drainage and things will be addressed. And then as the lands move forward to development, they would, that lot in particular may have to go through site plan approval. And at that time, any grading and servicing would be addressed for any future development.
Great, thank you. I have one further question. Maybe staff can advise on this. If the EIS that the region is asking for, what happens if the development potential of the property is impacted because of the EIS? I'm just questioning whether that should have been done first.
The EIS is not an it's not a process that necessarily has to be, we're saying this is part of the conditions to create the lots is to do the EIS. So it will precede the development. What it won't precede is the finalization or the decision today. But I mean, an EIS will be done at the appropriate time so that when development occurs, a buildable envelope will be established through the EIS. It's typically how it's done. Same with the plan of subdivision. You do a draft approval and then you have all the conditions that you have to fulfill. This is no different than that.
Great, thank you. If there's no more questions or comments, or do we have questions or comments? Oh, Mr. Patterson?
I would like to say something.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to provide transparency on the EIS. The EIS is only applicable to 37 Hyman Street. We have confirmed with the planner who authorized this staff report that the EIS would not be required in support of these severances. The EIS would only be required through the development agreement registered on title at the time when 37 Hyman Street goes forward. So the development of 45, the creation of the 3 lots and the building of the singles and the semi could occur in the absence of an EIS. The EIS would come later at the time when 37 Hyman Street is developed. Just to be clear, so everyone knows.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a lot going on here. I generally understand the proposal. There's going to be 2 singles. The semis will front onto which street? Through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is yet to be finalized because we haven't done a full building design in conformance with the zoning regulations for that lot yet. And that will be determined as well through discussions with municipal staff about where the actual driveway entrance to that lot will be supportable.
Thank you. And the configuration of the multiple on the lot that you're asking the committee to create, what's the nature of that multiple dwelling?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, we did provide an example to staff of another development in town located on Connaught Street. It's a multiple dwelling. I believe it's 4 stories in height. You drive under the building to get to the parking in the back of the lot. We did provide that as an example, as that development is built on a lot that's the same size as this project. And from a zoning bylaw regulation, the lot size that we're proposing meets the lot size regulations in support of a multiple dwelling.
Mr. Chair, I think we would have definitely with this lot, we have single detached located all around what's proposed as a multiple dwelling. I don't know where on that block that lot we're being asked to create this multiple will be located. 4 stories. Again, sandwiched in between single detached. I am not prepared to support this application until I have a better understanding of what the resulting development is going to look like, unfortunately.
Thank you. Mr. McCall, do you have any questions or comments?
I understand what the applicant is asking for, and to me it's fairly straightforward. At this point in time, and I don't think it's a requirement for severance, that you don't really need full plans, elevations at this point, because you're still going to be working through this. The retained house on the retained lot, there's nothing to be really talked about there, so I'm not quite sure why my colleague has concerns.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have no concerns with the retained lands, the retained lot on 45, or the proposed severance of 45, or the severed lot on 37. My concern is this very long, narrow lot that's being created that is going to be the lot that contains a multiple dwelling. How many dwelling units? We don't know. We don't know how many dwelling units, where it's going to be situated on this site, how it's going to be accessed. All of these questions remain unknown, and if you're asking to create a pretty unique lot for that type of use in the middle of single detached houses, I would want to have that kind of information before me before I decide to create the lot for that purpose.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The example that was presented to this committee, I believe is 430 Connaught. I know that development very well. I don't have a conflict of interest because it's not before us here today. It's a very unique building. I'm involved with the construction of it through a different organization I belong to, and it is due to open in June. And it's a wonderful little building that is suitable in a developed area. So I don't see any problems that Mr. Patterson's going to come across. And I know it's a long, skinny lot, but it's doable.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to respond at all, or am I?
You know, I can understand Ms. Meter's position on wanting a little bit of clarity on how the lot's going to be developed. We're creating a very unique lot where by the severance, you know, R6, if we could just lean on staff, that does allow multiples.
It allows multiples, through you, Mr. Chair, it allows multiples, townhouses, singles, semis.
And by doing so, we're basically, the front of the house is going to, or the building will be put at the front of the lot with parking at the back, I would suspect, because that would be the only way it's going to be developed. And you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people all backing onto a parking lot, and that's what we're creating, a parking lot in the rear of these properties. I definitely hear and I echo your concerns to find out how this is going to be developed. You know, by creating this, we're creating a parking lot that's going to affect a lot more residents than just the ones that are impacted here, that are here. Mr. Patterson?
Thank you for your indulgence. I guess my response to that would be that the lot we're creating meets the zoning bylaw regulations for a lot that would house a multiple dwelling. So that was the basis for our application. Going back to my previous comments about the applicability of site plan approval, again, I don't see the applicability of site plan approval for the singles and the semi that are proposed, but the multiple dwelling would definitely be subject to site plan approval. And I keep going back to the comments that this committee's already made today, but at that time, if we needed minor variances, if there was something that was not in conformity to the zoning bylaw, we would be back before this committee and you would be looking to the people that guide you every time to tell you whether the development that we needed a variance on was inappropriate. However, if we can meet the regulations of the R6 zoning on the lot that meets the lot frontage and lot area size, I would suggest, and meet parking and meet everything else without having to come back to this committee, then I would suggest that it should be left to staff and that we work within the existing zoning.
I think to echo, to align with Ms. Meter at this point in time, I think that her concern is there's a lot of residents here who are not here, and they're not, I don't think that they're quite aware of what can happen with these severances to the retained lands, because we're creating, basically, we're taking a lot that's not suitable for a multiple residential development, and it is now going to become it's going to become suitable for a multiple residential development. You know, the buildability, I think that's a word, it's not really there at this point in time, but by creating the extra width in the front portion, it allows that. So her expressed concerns about the back of these lots, and part of the problem is once we approve this, it takes it out of the public input. You know, we're just basically at the developer and city staff's position on this development, and you know, we're going to be impacting a lot of people here who I don't think are clear on what the proposal is or how it was made. You know, and I have a little bit of concerns. You know, once again, we're told about the complaints and notifications are an issue, and I'm just curious to know. I'm sure that these people were notified because they bought the property, but I'm just echoing some concerns. You know, and I know staff does a good job, and you know it's going to be insured, but I doubt that any of these people are aware what's going to happen at this empty, long, skinny lot that's been there forever. That's my concern.
Just one last response to that, Mr. Chair. In a worst-case situation, if this, and I don't want this to come across in any way negative, theoretically, though, we could demolish the building on 37 Hyman Street today and proceed with a multiple dwelling. And theoretically, we shouldn't have to come back to the committee. My client is trying to maximize the development potential of these lands to create what he is, or proposing right now. I'm just throwing that out there that theoretically we could remove the building that's there today and proceed with a multiple dwelling, go through site plan approval, and the neighbors would not be involved in that process as well. So that's the alternative. It's out there. I fully recognize Ms. Meter's concerns. I appreciate her comments and I value them because of her profession. But that's the alternative, is that we could seek that remedy and remove 37 Hyman Street and go forward in that fashion as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I wholly appreciate that, but the fact is the applicant is coming before us for a severance to reduce the developable area. Until you sever, there's more land to work with for a multiple. Once you sever that land, it becomes a very awkward site, and I would want to understand how it works. But I do appreciate that today, and the residents could be subjected to a multiple development on the existing lot, which is larger than what's being proposed.
Sorry, thanks, Julianne. Please.
Yeah, and I just wanted to reiterate my concern that I mentioned at other intervals during the course of the meeting today. I do have some concern with the applicant requesting that Condition 5 be removed for the same reasons that I stated earlier. I think it's really important. I concur that Ms. Meter has a very good point, that there are some obviously unknowns at this point in time with the development. That's why the one site will be subject to site plan approval. While we're not asking that the other sites are subject to site plan approval, I am trying to clarify that that is not the case, but we do want to make sure that the development is appropriate for the remainder of the lots. Putting a semi in an area that, next to a multiple and then perhaps a single, we want to make sure that all that works in concert. So that's why we've asked for those site plans, recognizing that those two types of uses, singles and semis, don't typically require Section 41, and nor are we requesting Section 41 permission. We are requesting just to have a look at what type of development is going to be on there and the scale and the massing. That's what staff has been requesting all along for all the other applications today as well.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, Mr. Patterson has said that he doesn't like paragraph 5, but he said he'd live with it. So I don't see a big problem with this. I think it's fairly straightforward. And I, again, coming back to this, have personal experience in the development of a long, skinny lot. And I'm sure Mr. Patterson, with his experience in this life, knows the challenges that go along with that and has probably been involved with developments similar to this in other applications. So I'm in support of this. In addition to the region fees, the GRCA fees, there's some notes from KW Hydro, standard stuff.
I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Please.
It's going to be very complicated, I think, but so perhaps you will just vote on it.
Okay, then I will move that this be approved with all of the, again, pages of conditions, standard normal stuff, including paragraph 5, condition number 5, and with the region fees, the GRCA fees, etc. So there's my motion.
Mr. Chair, can we deal, I will have different positions on each application, so perhaps we could deal with each application separately.
Certainly. So,
My
application...
apologies, through the chair. I don't mean to interject and cause more issue, but without the severance that's identified in B 2018-021, the subsequent applications wouldn't be able to occur because the lot addition is required to make the severances for the other two.
Right. Thank you for the clarification.
So if you would like to vote on conditions separately, that would be amenable. You would need to vote on the recommendations separately and request the conditions that you'd like to be voted on to be pulled out.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's helpful. With that, then I will not second the motion so long as it includes for consistency, the conditions that were raised by the applicant.
I will second the motion from Mr. McCall. Although I question not the site or the developability of it and the buildability of it, because I understand the process and things like that, but I am going to side with staff and Mr. McCall's decision, because I do believe, my only question is, my concern is the residents who abut the property because it is long skinny. That is really my only concern with this, because this is how we're going to get our density. This is how we're going to increase our density across the city. This is what's going to be happening time and time again. And I am in support of it, right? But I have to still I still have to show that I have support and thoughts for these people who are out there. And even though I might not agree with the process where these people are kind of excluded from it, and they should have that opportunity to come and speak to this, and I don't think a clear representation was given to them about what the potential was going to happen. I do second the opinion, Mr. McCall's motion. All in favor?
Before we vote, Mr. Chair, I know it's a long, skinny lot abutting, what did you say, 6 different adjacent properties. I'm sure at the site plan there will be issues of fencing and landscaping and all of the appropriate stuff to mitigate any adverse impact. I'm also looking at this lot overall, and depending upon how big you make the multi-residential, you're going to have lots of parking out the back, and there'll even be green space. Not having seen a site plan yet, I'm just kind of guessing a little bit, but that before we vote, well, I guess it's on the floor, isn't it, Mr. Chair?
Sure
so
is.
you're going to call a vote?
I already did. All in favor? Opposed? So approved. All right, application 2018-0242, Crossbridge Avenue.
Hello, I'm Pat Haramis, acting as the agent for the owner. 2 Crossbridge, at the last Friday before the application deadline was Lenore Ross of the city asked for a wraparound porch, and so we asked for an additional variance. So we asked for this one to be deferred. That didn't get submitted for some reason. It was submitted on time, but it didn't get...
Okay, so we have a recommendation to approve. Do you want to change the application? Is that what's happening with it? And therefore we have to re-advertise? Can I get a motion to defer?
Motion.
All right, all in favor? Okay. All right, application 2018-025, 500 River Trail Avenue.
Next meeting.
It been resubmitted. It just wasn't caught in the application post, so it'll be re-advertised for next month.
Give him 60 or 90 days just in case something happens. Like he doesn't show up. I'll call him.
I apologize.
All right, 500 River Trail Avenue. Recommendation is to approve subject to a building permit.
Yep, it's fine.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
This is fairly straightforward, very minor. Mr. Chair, I move that this be approved with the one condition, which is to get a building permit.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Dana.
What happened to the city?